I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from tomorrow,
the people decide.
As the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections,
we'll take you through the night as the first results come in.
And we'll pick up at breakfast
with the very best guests and analysis.
And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from tomorrow at midnight on GB News.
Hello there, a new day, a new month, 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 1st of May.
You are very welcome to Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Leading our news this morning, the man tasered and arrested after multiple stabbings in northeast London remains in custody but is yet to be interviewed given his injuries.
It's crunch day for the Scottish Government. They face a vote of no confidence put forward by Labour. If lost, all ministers would be forced to step down. King Charles tells cancer patients on his return to public duty that his diagnosis came as a bad shock as the government launches the biggest prostate cancer trial of its kind to test the effectiveness of treating the disease. The first failed asylum seeker has been sent to Rwanda and given a fee to do so, funded by the taxpayer. They've left, having been rejected by the asylum system, didn't arrive on a small boat via the Channel. Blackpool prepares for its by-election. That's happening tomorrow. We gauge the mood there as rival parties aim to heap more pressure on the Conservatives with time ticking for a general election.
And in the sport, Harry Kane scores. Well, of course he does, because that's what he does. His 43rd goal of the season as Bayern Munich draw 2-2 with Real Madrid in the Champions League semi-final. First leg, Ipswich Town are just 1 point away from the promised land. And when the Open comes to Royal Troon in the summer, they'll have the longest hole in the tournament's history. Very long.
A lot of cloud today with a few showers around, but some heavy, potentially thundery rain arrives overnight in the far south. I'll have the full details in the forecast coming up shortly.
Just highlighting some of the interviews that we've got lined up for you. We're going to be talking to the Minister for Women and Equalities, that's Kemi Badenoch, who will be discussing the importance of women's-only spaces. What time's she on at?
Just before 9 o'clock.
Just before 9 o'clock, if you can hang around for that.
And as always, we love to hear from you throughout the course of the programme. Get in touch via our website. It is gbnews.com/yoursay.
Top story on this Wednesday morning. Former Detective Chief Superintendent of the Met, Kevin Hurley, has called for all officers to be armed.
Yes, this comes after another high-profile incident in London where a man was tasered, then arrested on suspicion of murder following the death of a 14-year-old boy.
Now, all of this happened almost at this time yesterday. 5 people treated for injuries, with dramatic footage showing the moment the attacker was stopped by police. Assistant Commissioner
Louisa Rolfe said police have found no trace of a prior incident involving the suspect, while the Prime Minister says there is no place for violence like this on our streets.
Well, we're joined this morning by former Metropolitan Police Detective Peter Bleksley. Good morning to you, Peter.
Good morning.
Horrendous incidents like this always provoke the debate, don't they, about whether or not all police should be armed. What's your view in that, given the views this morning that we've heard?
Well, less than 24 hours ago, I was on this channel debating with Kevin Hurley that police officers should not be routinely armed. But since then, I have questioned my standpoint and spent many hours thinking, is my position correct? And I've listened to many learned voices, other police voices, including that of a current serving firearms officer. If we were to routinely arm all our police officers, our frontline uniformed police officers, it would fundamentally change policing forever. And many of the officers currently serving on the front line would not be able to carry a firearm because, of course, they're not trained, but they're not fit enough. And with carrying a firearm comes a huge amount of discipline.
Now, what do you mean fit enough? Fit enough as in technically to fire the guns, or fit enough as in physically fit?
Physically fit, because the current physical fitness test for a police officer, the bar is set fairly low, whereas for firearms officers, it's considerably higher, and rightfully so. Because if we look, for example, to America, I'm not using it as a like-for-like comparison, of course, but if we look to America, tragically, many police officers every year lose their lives courtesy of their own firearms, which are taken from them by criminals and then used to shoot those law enforcement officers. So it is absolutely right that police officers carrying guns are very, very fit and, of course, very disciplined.
Look, Peter, you know, we're going to hear arguments all day, oh, it'll change the force and we shouldn't have this and goodness me. You've got a whole police force in Northern Ireland where everyone is armed, right? All the officers are armed. Do we notice a darn bit of difference in our policing? No, we do not.
No, although, of course, some would argue the background to officers being armed in Northern Ireland is a very, very different one to mainland UK. I understand the arguments of those who want to push for this, but it would be such a seismic change.
I can honestly say to you, right, that officers on patrol, officers standing in front of you in the petrol station, whatever, I don't see anybody recoiling at the fact that they have guns.
No, I agree. And when I travel abroad, sometimes if I'm in an airport or if I'm just out and about in a city in Europe, I am somewhat reassured when I'm standing close to a police officer that I see is fit, is trim, is armed. I find that reassuring. But to do it in the UK, where we have no history...
But you are doing it in the UK, you're doing it in Northern Ireland, that's the UK.
I do beg your pardon.
But can we just talk about the moment of arrest yesterday of this particular guy? Because a lot of people will have seen this doorbell footage.
He should have just been shot through the head.
You can see that seconds after he's tasered, the armed police arrive. It would have been a matter of seconds if the police had waited for the firearms officers to arrive. Would it have made any difference if they'd have shot him with a gun rather than a taser? You still probably need to have the same sort of range in order for accuracy, especially as you're given that there are members of the public in the area and other officers. I mean, would the outcome yesterday have been different if all of those officers that got there first had been armed instead of the ones that got there seconds later?
Well, we're hypothesising, of course, but many of us will have seen the footage of that female officer as she discharges her taser. Had that taser been a firearm, then I suspect the circumstances would have been identical in that a firearm would have been discharged.
I wonder what, Peter, the story is behind this guy. We don't know yet, and they say that his taser injuries have left him immobile, that he can't talk, he can't do an interview at the moment with all of this. But what on earth was behind this guy and why he did what he did, and the fact that this young lad, this 14-year-old lad, was walking to school and this guy seemingly just attacks him out of the blue?
For me, you raise arguably the most important point about the police investigation that is currently ongoing. Let's just rewind less than 11 months to the tragic events of Nottingham, Valdo Calacani and his murderous spree that he went on, resulting in the loss of 3 lives, Barnaby, Grace and Ian, and the attempted murder of 3 others. That man went to court and pleaded guilty to manslaughter through diminished responsibility, and that caused, quite rightfully, an outrage. I sincerely hope that the police investigation into the background of the man arrested yesterday is very thorough in that it explores any potential illegal drug use. I have no evidence to suggest that that man has gone down that route in the past, but I am strongly suggesting that that investigation must look at that in great thoroughness, because if this man, and these are if, buts and maybes, I accept that, if this man is to later claim diminished responsibility through a mental illness, and if there is a history of drug taking in the past, that might negate that. He may not be able to enter that plea.
You see, we're sitting here, we're debating this, and we're giving it the due attention that it deserves. But I ask our viewers and listeners today, would any of you be distressed today if he had been shot dead, shot through the head? I reckon if he had just been shot and it was over and done with quickly, the evidence is there. He's got a sword in his hand, for goodness sake. He killed this young lad, and other people are very seriously injured as well because of all of this. Who would care? Who would care
Some people think
that he would be dirt in the ground?
Killing perpetrators gives them an easy out. They don't have to answer for their actions, and sending people to jail gives them a long time to think about that. What about knife amnesties? What about, you know, better enforcement of the laws that exist around zombie knives, around samurais? Because the government have done a lot to try and cut this down. Is it the role of social media in making it too easy for youngsters to get hands on these? I mean, there have to be more questions asked about the issue of knives here in the UK rather than necessarily just about guns for the police.
I think there is a very worrying trend of copycat offending. I've already alluded to those dreadful events in Nottingham of last year, and let's look at that Sydney attack in Australia that happened in that shopping mall only a couple of short weeks ago, when a man again went on the rampage, killing many people armed with a bladed weapon. Is there copycat offending? Do we need more police officers? We're never going to live in a crime-free nirvana, I know that, but do we need more police patrolling? Do we need more legislation? The Home Office have promised some of that. But yes, these big headline questions need to be asked and answers need to be found.
The dilemma, of course, is that as soon as a firearms officer discharges their weapon, they're put on immediate suspension. And you've got to wonder, do the people who carry firearms, are they adequately supported? And I use support in every sense of the word with this. But these people who buy these swords, who use these swords, who go on the rampage publicly, have got to know there's only going to be one outcome, and that's a bullet through the head. And it seems to be that they don't seem to care.
Well, forgive me if I sound like I'm nitpicking here, Eamonn, but police officers do not aim at the head. You aim at the torso, because that is the area most likely to stop that person doing what they're doing, and it's also a bigger target, so it's a more effective way of discharging a gun. Yes, I quite agree. However, there is a huge question to be asked about this type of offending, which is becoming more prevalent. Maybe there needs to be some joined-up thinking. We are yet to hear whether there is any history of mental illness. There certainly was with Valdo Calacani in Nottingham, and greater steps could have been taken to stop that man or arrest him before his offending. Many, many questions remain unanswered. Tragically, a 14-year-old boy lies dead, and, of course, members of the public were injured, and 2 heroic police officers have had to undergo surgery.
Peter,
praise those heroes.
What message has the general public, has the people watching and listening to us today, what have they got to take away? What have they got to ask themselves? We've got an election coming up this year. What do you think the question for the general public is to come to terms with?
What kind of police service do we want? Do we want a visible, street patrolling, robust, stop and searching type of police service, or do we want a social service, which is what we currently have in so many regards?
Lots of you getting in touch already this morning. Thank you for hopping onto our website, gbnews.com/your say. Lucky Jim has said tasers are actually really easily defeated by thick clothing. Clearly doesn't think that they are a good enough safeguard. William Howard saying, as a retired veteran, I find it terrifying to think of all of our police officers being armed. Our police are poorly trained in general. We have terrible recruitment standards, and even the armed police are not well trained, he thinks. He says it's a disaster waiting to happen. Let us know what you think, whether you agree with those views or not.
Well, I don't agree with those
conversation
views.
Going.
I don't agree with them at all. You know, you've got one of the biggest police forces in the UK, the Police Service of Northern Ireland. You do not hear or read about shootings gone wrong in Northern Ireland. It's a whole situation that everybody seems to be able to come to terms with. The public operate under the guise of knowing that they could be shot by a police officer, and there doesn't seem to be any outrage or outcry about it. So you can do it there. If a police officer needs trained, send them to the PSNI and they'll be able to do it. So that's what I think about it. Let us know what you think throughout the programme. And Peter Blexley, we'll leave it there. Always interested to hear from you, Peter, as to, you know, the way things should go and your whole feeling on this, having served for so many years. Thank you very much.
And I would just like to thank you very much for challenging my thinking and giving me an awful lot to ponder.
Well, that's what we always aim to do on this channel. Thank you, Peter. Now, into other news this morning. The Scottish Government is facing a no-confidence vote after the First Minister, Humza Yousaf, said he would resign.
His resignation on Monday came just 13 months after he replaced Nicola Sturgeon there. So there's another leadership contest underway, and the crisis in the SNP gives the opportunity for the Labour Party to regain ground ahead of the national election, which we are talking about there. The Scottish Tories and Lib Dems have backed the motion, but without support from the Greens, it would be defeated.
Right, so a big day north of the border. Let's get some more analysis on all this from our political commentator this morning, who is Andy Williams. Good morning to you, Andy. What way do you think that this is going to play out? And I suppose the big question really is where this leaves the future of the Scottish National Party.
Yeah, so I mean, firstly, on the vote itself, it does seem quite unlikely to pass. The Greens have said that they've withdrawn their support for the motion. I think they got what they wanted when Humza Yousaf resigned, so they've got their scalp. You've now got the SNP in complete disarray. But looking at the bigger picture, it leaves the SNP argument for independence, which they've been fighting for such a long time for, in a really, really tricky spot. I think it was interesting when Humza Yousaf gave his resignation statement, I think it was on Monday, and he said independence feels frustratingly close, but I don't think that's the case. I don't think many people would agree with that. In fact, it feels further away than it has been for a very, very long time.
There were lots of headlines the next day saying, oh, this is a great day for the United Kingdom. People feeling like, you know, those threats, as some perceive them to be, have gone away with this crisis for the SNP.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's nearly 10 years since the referendum was in September 2014, and there was a 10-point gap when that vote happened. All of the polling suggests that it would be at least that margin, if not a bigger margin, for in favour of the union now. So for the independence movement, it's a really, really difficult time. And actually, if you look ahead to the general election this year, the SNP's polling really badly because people are so unhappy, not just with the kind of chaos we've seen over the last 12 months.
Lots of commentary saying that Labour stands to gain from all of this mess at a general election, but where do they stand after this no-confidence vote today? Will it change their prospects from today, or is it really once we go to the polls nationally?
I think looking ahead to the general election, Labour stand to pick up a lot of SNP seats. So the SNP currently have 43 seats in the UK Parliament in Scotland. That's projected to go down to about 19, most of which Labour would pick up. So from a UK general election perspective, great. We're still 2 years away from a Scottish election, but Anas Samwar, the Labour leader, has to be in the box seat for that as well.
They're not just losing votes over independence, of course, as well. People are looking at the SNP's record in lots of things, particularly health, and they haven't done well.
No, it's a really poor record, actually, across the board on public services. Health, you know, waiting times, the NHS Scotland, which is controlled by the SNP, by the Scottish Government, is in disarray. education not going well at all. Across the board, actually, it's a pretty damning record of failure, I'd say. And I think what it shows is that when single-issue parties come into power, it's not just about making the argument for independence every day. You have to run a functional government and a country that works, and they've sort of failed on that score. The other thing I'd say is that, you know, Alex Salmond at the time and then Nicola Sturgeon were uniquely, in sort of Scottish political history, charismatic, popular politicians who people really got on board with. And you're not going to get another two of them coming along.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult if you look at the future of the SNP.
People I know in Scotland basically believe the SNP buy votes. That, you know, so if you want education, you want healthcare, you want free prescriptions, whatever it is, they are the party. That's what they do. The middle classes do not feel represented by them. They feel they're there to be taxed, to be the cash cow to pay for everything else.
Well, there certainly is a feeling that sort of reflects that. What I would also say is that there's two things going on when there are votes in Scotland. One is it's a proxy, every time it's a proxy vote on independence. So it reflects people's feelings collectively on whether or not independence is something they want for Scotland. The other thing is, obviously, there is historically a really significant antipathy towards the Tories in Scotland.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're not sort of in the race in the same way as they are in a UK general election.
Just, you know, when you're talking about how unique Nicola Sturgeon and Alex Salmond were, I totally agree that their sort of intellect is formidable. But in terms of lacking charisma, I would say Ian Blackford was a heck of a character down in Westminster and certainly had a lot of entertaining back and forth with Boris in his heyday when he was their spokesperson in Westminster. And even Stephen Flynn, you know, like him or loathe him, he delivers punchlines in the Commons. Like, I don't know if it's maybe the Scottish way, but I don't think there's a lack of charisma in the SNP at the moment. I just think perhaps not the same intellectual clout as you've...
No, I mean, I think that's a very fair point, and Ian Blackford did deliver some great moments at PMQs. Obviously, they're in the Westminster Parliament, and if you're looking at the options for, you know, for the next leader of the SNP, John Swinney, maybe a bit of a character, but, I mean, Humza Yousaf was lacklustre, really lacklustre, and you know, how long did he last? 13 months.
Longer than some people thought.
Why did you think he was lacklustre? I always thought the poor man came across as angry all the time. There was always a simmering... Yeah, he did. He just... Everything was... He was, like, spitting everything out. And I thought he spoke like... you know, as if he was representing a paramilitary organisation. There was a threatening sort of tone to everything that he said.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think the truth is that some people... running a country is a difficult job.
Yeah.
And most people, frankly, are not up to it. And he just wasn't. You know, he happened to be the person in the box seat at the time who took over from Nicola Sturgeon in difficult circumstances and actually made a really poor miscalculation, which has ended his political career.
Well, next time you come back, Andy, we're going to be talking about this Rwandan situation and how much it's cost to send one person to Rwanda. Thank you for the moment very much indeed. And let's look at the other stories making the news this morning.
And as Eamonn was touching on there, the latest on Rwanda, the first failed asylum seeker has voluntarily gone to Rwanda, taking a £3,000 fee from the taxpayer. They've left, having been rejected by the asylum system, didn't arrive on a small boat via the Channel, and he has gone to the Central African nation.
Two men have been charged with causing criminal damage following the felling of the famous Sycamore Gap tree. You may remember this in Northumberland. The iconic tree, which stood next to Hadrian's Wall for 200 years, was chopped down in September last year. Why is the question.
A new prostate cancer screening initiative has been called a pivotal moment that could save thousands of lives. The Transform project aims to reduce deaths from the disease by 40%, with doctors collating data to help make treatments more effective. Prostate cancer kills 12,000 men in Britain every year.
Turn to Blackpool again. Blackpool South will head the polls tomorrow after the resignation of their former MP, and that is a by-election as a result.
Yeah, often recognised as, I suppose, one of the most deprived areas of the country. And voters in this constituency will be demanding real and meaningful change from whichever candidate is successful.
OK, our reporter Sophie Reaper has the story.
The world-famous Blackpool Promenade. Once upon a time, people flocked from all over the globe to visit this iconic seaside resort. But in recent years, the town has gained a rather different reputation. In fact, the most recent government figures place 8 of the 10 most deprived neighbourhoods in the country here in Blackpool.
Have you enjoyed your stay?
The Royal Boston Hotel first opened its doors back in 1934. Since then, the promenade has completely changed, and not necessarily for the better.
Blackpool can be beautiful, it can be wonderful, but it also can look very run down when you drive up and down the promenade. So it needs investment, and I think there's people willing to invest, but it's just unlocking that key around how we can do that and how we can actually change those buildings and that structure.
Tomorrow, the people of Blackpool South will head to the polls to choose their new MP. For John, the successful candidate needs to secure the town's future by making decisions now.
A huge part of what the MP is going to need to do is to create that job and those opportunities and work with local businesses to create that opportunity. Because we see, and I see, a huge amount of talent leaving Blackpool. They're the ambassadors for the town, they're the future of Blackpool.
Here at the heart of Blackpool's tourist economy, its tower still stands, its illuminations still shine. And yet now, for its people, they feel it's time for change.
Blackpool South's about to get a new MP. What do you want them to do for Blackpool?
To invest more money in the mental health services around Blackpool, because there isn't much to offer for young people.
They need to invest more money in the people of Blackpool rather than the tourist areas.
Make it safer, make it a better community, especially with the cost of living crisis.
Do more for Blackpool residents, more for the homeless, which they don't actually do. They place them into hotels, leave them for 3 months, and if they don't find a place within them 3 months, they move. I'm one of them people.
I think it's quite sad actually.
Yes.
It's very sad because Blackpool was massive.
A once glittering tourist trap, the Blackpool of today seems to have lost some of its sparkle. And for its local people, they can only hope their new MP can restore the town to happier days. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
Bring you a full list of candidates that you will have there standing in Blackpool South. They are Stephen Plack, who's an independent, Mark Butcher, Reform UK, Andrew Cregan, Lib Dems, Harling Lord Hope, official monster raving Looney Party, David Jones, Conservatives, Kim Knight, Alliance for Freedom and Democracy.
And Damon Sharp, he is standing for the non-poll party, Ben Thomas for the Greens and Chris Webb for Labour.
Our Great British giveaway, time to remind you of that. It is a biggie. It's 20,000 grand and it could be yours.
We've blown the budget by giving you the chance to win a totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For a chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Isabel's very annoyed today. She thinks I have a habit of sucking my teeth, which I say I'm not sucking my teeth, I'm blowing.
No, that was not blowing. Blowing sounds like this. This is sucking, which you do.
Well, I take them out, I look at them, I put them in a glass, clean them, put them back in again. Everything seems fine.
And that's all during the giveaway.
All during the giveaway. Still to come, why gardeners are being encouraged to be lazy and neglect your grass. We'll find out all about that after this.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel. Some good news for everybody that just likes mowing the lawn. OK, you're being encouraged to let your borders grow and everything else.
Yes, a new study says that in the last 100 years, 97% of English wildflower meadows have been lost.
OK. There's a conservation group called Plant Life, and they're encouraging you to not cut your grass throughout the month of May to allow wildflowers to fight back, OK? So joining us now, Senior Ecological Advisor of Plant Life, Sarah Shuttleworth. Good morning, Sarah. What's your patch look like today? What are you standing in?
Oh, it's a bit of a tricky connection there, which is a shame. Do you know what I've decided to do? Because I'm quite a neat freak, as you know, so I like my lawn to look nice, but I've assigned an area for no-mow, and it's been absolutely spectacular. We've had everything from bluebells at the moment, and then there's cow parsley coming through. We've had a few random self-flowering tulips and lots of daffodils. So it's absolutely delightful, buzzing with bees and all the rest of it, which is supposed to be really good for the planet, but I still have my neat area. So that kind of ticks both boxes. But no mow, May, will you be doing it? Is it laziness? Is it kind of gardening goes woke? Or is it actually time to give the bees a chance, try and replace some of those wildflowers that we've lost?
Oh, I think there's room. I think there's room for both. I mean,
I do.
You know, I do like an orderly patch, as it were. But yes. Why does everybody think I'm deaf and I can't hear?
The audience don't know what's going on.
But I'm just telling the audience goes on. People shouting in your ear about all sorts of things. Here's Paul. And sport last night, Paul.
Hold on, I love a mowed lawn. I do, I love a mowed lawn.
I agree with you.
But wildflowers as well for your buzzy bees. It's good for them.
I know, but I like a mowed lawn. But
we'll have both, do both.
But you know what? Secretly, between us, what I've been doing is that just down the road from me, there's all this overgrown ivy, and it's getting over this fence, which is now going over onto the pavement. So I take some secateurs with me.
Yes.
And as I take the dog for a walk, I do a bit of this.
Do you?
And I'm cutting it down bit by bit. Is that good, or is that
really
bad,
good.
Or is that one of those, what on earth is that man doing?
It's really good, but I just think maybe if somebody's alone walking along and they see this man brandishing some secateurs, they might be
and I put them out of my
frightened.
pocket, and every time I go past. But the thing is, I'm now getting obsessed, and so now every place I'm going past, I go...
No, well, I'll tell you, my husband's done that with the strimmer on the little pub to our local pub because it got really overgrown and we were like, we can't get to the pub, we're going to have to take the strimmer along.
So he walks to the pub and he goes... Does all
Does he
that?
have to find a plug first, though? Or?
No, it's, you know,
Oh, it's
petrol.
Oh,
Yeah.
What, one of them?
With the headphones, the whole 9 yards,
Like
yeah.
one of those.
Right, so it all went between Bayern and Real last night, all square.
2-2, Harry Kane, the man is a machine, 43rd goal of the season. So he's joint top scorer with Kylian Mbappe from PSG with goal scorer in all competitions. The most combined goals and assists than anybody else. I remember Harry Kane when he first broke through.
Yeah.
And he was playing at Tottenham and he appeared and I was saying, he's never going to make it. The kid's no good, you know. He's like,
what you know.
It does show what I know. At least I'm honest. You know, I could go on and say I knew he'd make it, but there are a lot of people the same. It was just like this tall kid playing up front. It's never going to work for him, and look what happened. And it just shows hard work, bit of talent, and just and he's been unbelievable. So now at Bayern Munich,
nurturing, I
it
think.
really has.
What I would have given, probably about 120 million, to have had him at Man United. You know, amazing, absolutely incredible. What a great season. It doesn't really matter what Bayern do, but he has scored, what,
43
goals.
So it's for him, it's been a huge success.
And you always say that from behind the scenes, he's a good fella as well.
He is.
Good role
He's another
model.
one. Hasn't changed. Lovely guy, real family man, and you know, he gets a lot of stick from other teams, but that's always going to be the way when someone's so good.
Yeah.
But the perfect ambassador, the perfect England captain. So it was 2-2. So this is the first leg, and although Jude Bellingham, interestingly, tried to put Harry off when he had a penalty, went over and whispered in his ear.
Did he?
What he said, I don't know, but you know, you've got to be careful. He's the captain of your England team. So Harry just ignored it. Boom.
I wouldn't have ignored him.
So
I'd have
next week,
him. Might have been sent
semi-final.
off at that stage.
Yeah.
You know, that sort of thing. Now, listen, there's a great guy who manages Ipswich Town. He's the ex-Manchester United youth coach, and his name's Kieran McKenna.
Yes.
And
used to be at Spurs as a young player.
Was he?
Yeah.
So he left United
Allen,
to go and manage Ipswich, and he's doing a really good job now. We already know Leicester are up. Ipswich very close. They're within a point.
They are 1 point away. So all they need is now a point from that last game. They're playing Huddersfield. Huddersfield have been struggling, so that happened. So they beat Coventry. By the way, have you ever noticed when people say Coventry instead of Coventry?
No.
Have you never?
No. Never.
There are people I've known that have gone, oh, Coventry. And the guy that used to do the football results years ago...
James Alexander.
For example, he would have said Coventry City 1, Ipswich Town 2. And I didn't know whether Coventry was a thing.
Place.
Was a thing. No, but it's a thing. Some people still say Coventry, and I don't even know where that comes from.
I would say Coventry.
You would be. Well, Coventry. Of course it's Coventry. But anyway, there are some Coventries around.
Well, interesting.
But
what way do you say it?
Yeah, please. How do you say it?
If you're sent to Coventry.
Yeah, we looked that up, didn't we?
Yeah.
Can't remember what it
Coventry.
meant.
Royal Troon, where the Open's going to be held this year, they're planning the longest hole in British Open golf history. How long are we talking?
What do you reckon?
Well, it'll be a par 5.
It will be a par 5. For me, a par 23.
It's got to be over 500 yards. Do they measure it in yards or metres?
In yards.
600 yards.
623.
Wow.
It's a long way. I wonder whether it's anything to do with the fact that players are more powerful and clubs will go much further.
Balls.
Well, that's easy for you to say.
No, balls.
I think it was quite a good story.
Balls will go further. I mean, the dimples in balls
yes.
are very important.
That's absolutely right. But I spoke to Ian Woosnam about a year ago.
Yeah, he could hit them.
But he said that he can hit a ball further now, and he's, what, in his 60s?
He's older, weaker.
Yeah, than he could when he won the Masters because of the technology of the clubs. So the balls are going further, and it means that golf clubs and golf courses are playing shorter, 623. So that's, and also, you know, interesting, they're having the shortest hole in history actually on the same course. So we've got 623 for one hole, and then that's the 6th, and then the 8th hole, which is called the postage stamp, will be playing 99 yards, which is, for me, is a putt, really.
I'll agree with you.
You know, you could
under
putt it,
100 yards.
Yeah. So anyway, it's sold out. How many tickets do you reckon they've sold for the Open? 4 days of the Open.
I'd say
Troon.
15,000 a day. So 60,000 tickets.
60,000. What do you reckon, Izzy?
I'm going to go 70,000.
250,000 tickets. 250,000 people will go to the Open this year, and it's completely sold out. Yeah,
I mean,
hugely.
Golf. Have you ever watched a golf tournament close up? It's great. You can hear the clubs cut through the air like sabres. It's absolutely incredible. But what I would not like is to be, 20 rows back in a crowd like that, standing, watching. I mean, I can understand some tournaments where you get up close and personal, but it's a lot of people to see over the heads of.
The difference when you see a real good player and you see them strike the ball. You know what I really hate is they do that in America, and you get some fans or patrons, as they would be in the Masters, will stand as close as they can, and they will try and be the first one to shout the moment the ball is struck.
Yes.
So you get, it's in the hole, isn't it? It's like they're crying out loud, and they shout the moment that the ball is struck. Not good.
Not good.
I would not put up with that at the Open.
But you've been very good. We'll see you again 7:20, my friend.
Yeah, ripped baseball uniforms we'll be talking.
In the hole.
It's in the hole.
Right, we're going to get a check on the forecast. What's it up to? It's a beautiful day here yesterday. Aidan McGibbon.
Well, it was misty and foggy today. All over
really?
London.
On the way in?
Did you not notice?
I actually didn't notice.
Good start to the day, though. It
You
means
could hardly
it's going to be nice.
see in front of yourself.
Well, it was so dark when I came in, I didn't know what the weather was up to. Aidan McGibbon's going to tell us what's in store.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. A lot of cloud today with some showers, but there'll be more heavy rain arriving into the south overnight, even some thunderstorms. Initially, the best of any sunshine will be across the western parts, and there'll be some decent sunny spells around during the morning. Northwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Wales keep those sunny spells well into the afternoon. Otherwise, increasing amounts of cloud arrive from the east with some showery rain, especially for eastern Scotland, parts of central and eastern England. But away from the showery rain, actually it's going to be relatively warm, particularly where we get some sunshine through central parts, Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, temperatures up into the high teens, perhaps even 20, 21 Celsius. Nevertheless, looking towards the south into the evening, we've got this area of heavy rain moving up, perhaps even some thunderstorms across some southern counties of England into South Wales during the early hours of tomorrow. And those thunderstorms could be accompanied by frequent lightning, some very heavy rainfall. Be a noisy night in places, but they'll be hit and miss, and they will be clearing away across South Wales and the southwest of England during the morning tomorrow, leaving a legacy of low cloud and outbreaks of drizzly rain. Elsewhere, brighter skies develop after a mostly dry night. Plenty of sunshine for Scotland, Northern Ireland into much of central and eastern England, but some parts of northeast England and eastern Scotland will be affected by low cloud. That will make things feel much cooler.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, my mate Mylan, he's been having to admit out loud the police don't want him. There he
Does
is.
look a lot like him.
Yeah, that is a criminal e-fit, and Ryland's saying, it's not me, OK? Find out more about that in our newspaper review coming up next.
Same stylist.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding in Tyrone. The A5 is closed in both directions along Dewgerry Road to the southeast of Omagh after an accident. In Flintshire, the A541 is closed in both directions at Mould after a fire yesterday afternoon. The M1 in Bedfordshire is closed northbound from junction 11A, the A5 north of Dunstable to 13 at Bedford for emergency repairs. The damage caused after an accident and fuel spill yesterday. There were queues from junction 11, the A505 Luton and Dunstable turn, with delays too on the A5 through Hotcliffe where you're diverting. And on the M26 in Kent, there are 3 miles of westbound queues towards the M25, where it's down to a single lane going onto the M25 for emergency repairs. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from tomorrow,
the people decide.
As the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections,
we'll take you through the night as the first results come in.
And we'll pick up at breakfast
with the very best guests and analysis.
And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from tomorrow at midnight on GB News.
At this stage, we say hello, good morning to Fraser Myers and Scarlett Maguire.
Good morning.
Very good to have you. And you have the newspapers in front of you. And obviously, practically, I think all the papers today lead on yesterday's, which took place at this time yesterday, sword attack in northeast London. Fraser, what have you got to say?
Yeah, the Express is focusing on the hero police officer, which I think is actually a reasonable way to look at it. You know, we often criticise the Met Police for good reason, but, you know, sometimes people do put themselves at risk, put themselves in the line of fire to help the public. I mean, 2 officers were injured in this particular rampage, but they're singling out the policewoman who fired the taser, who eventually subdued her.
Can I just say on that, and Peter Blexley pointed this out to me, on that doorbell footage, you'll actually notice that he was also tasered on his lower leg before she tasered him, or possibly simultaneously. So there were 2 hero police officers. It just so happens that the footage shows her front and centre. So she's getting all the credit.
Did she not fire twice?
And clearly deserves a lot.
Did she not fire twice?
No, another one. If you look at this, there's 2 strands of taser. One comes in at the leg on the left, I believe. There.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then, unless she fires twice, maybe I've got that wrong, so I'm doubting myself now. But Peter Blexley said he'd already been tasered in the leg before she got him. So just wanted to point that out.
Well, I think everyone involved, deserves some credit. The police were at the scene very quickly. It seems as if, thankfully, after this, this horrific murder, he wasn't able to do much more harm.
How more brilliant it would have been if they just had shot him dead. That would have been the end of that.
Well, Scarlett, you won't agree with that, will you?
No,
you're not in favour of arming police officers.
I absolutely don't agree with it. I mean, I think what happened.
Why would you not agree with that? A man runs around with a sword, he kills dead a 14-year-old kid.
So he deserves to die.
Yes. Of course he deserves to die.
So let's kill all the murderers. Let's bring back hanging.
Well,
Eamonn.
in that
What
particular case, if I had been an officer there, I would have needed some holding back about discharging my weapon.
Well, I'm very pleased that you're not never armed.
Why? Why are you sticking up for him?
Look, I'm not sticking up for him.
You're saying...
I think what he did was horrendous. We do not know what was behind it. One is assuming it's a serious mental health episode. I think it's actually what I'm thinking about is that 14-year-old boy and his parents.
I know.
I mean, he goes off to school, you go bye-bye, and then he never comes back. But I mean, to start saying that the guy should have been shot dead, he was tasered. That was it, right? It's over. We can now find out actually what really happened. I don't think killing him does any good at all.
Have a say this morning. Get in touch with us. You know what to do.
Eamonn would it's a way to get rid of all the jails.
I would have killed him.
You just shoot everybody who murders somebody.
Well, that was a ghastly, horrendous murder. There is nothing in my mind that warrants him living.
But we haven't had death penalty for an awfully long time.
And there's nothing that warrants that guy in Nottingham last year living either.
It was ghastly and it was horrendous, but actually what it showed is how effective a taser is, because the taser stopped it, right? I think that's enough.
Let's talk about this flight. It's not actually... it's very... Right, there's nuance in this story. It's front of the Sun. The first migrant's gone to Rwanda, but this one is a voluntary case. So he'd already failed the asylum system. He did not have a legitimate cause to stay in this country in the law. And so he said, oh, OK, I'll take £3,000 from the taxpayer and I will go to Rwanda. Scarlett.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I am sure. In fact, we've heard that there are migrants who want to leave Britain because it's not the place they thought it was, and for some reason they're not being allowed to go. And we could. This is, I mean, it's a very odd... It doesn't happen very often. And obviously, if you say, we'll pay you £3,000 to leave if you're unhappy and we're going to throw you out anyway, he goes. I mean, this sort of has nothing to do with the Rwanda plan. I mean, he could almost...
Other than the fact that his destination was Rwanda, there's very little to do with the Rwanda scheme, which is going to be another 10 to 12 weeks before...
I know, which has cost us how many million? So on top of all the millions that we're paying Rwanda to have him, so he'll be staying in a very nice place, all on his own, and presumably beginning a new life. We don't know exactly where he comes from.
But is this a political win for Rishi Sunak?
I mean, he will try to spin it as one, I think. But as you say, this is not the main purpose of the Rwanda scheme. They are trying. It seems as if that they're trying to send people to, or trying to gather up people who they can send to Rwanda involuntarily, the people who don't want to leave the country, who are supposed to leave, and the Home Office is struggling to keep hold of them. People are disappearing left, right, and centre because they don't want to be on those flights. I mean, the other thing is we have to remember, Rishi Sunak gave himself the test of stopping the boats. That's the test of the Rwanda scheme on purely practical terms, not will a single flight go to Rwanda, if that makes sense. You know, that's putting aside all the kind of moral objections that people might have about sending people to Rwanda. But, yeah, stopping the boats is the test, not will the courts allow us to send a single migrant.
And we do know that he hasn't stopped the boats.
Yeah.
I mean, that we have more people coming over. And actually, an awful lot of people who do think the boats should be stopped and who are absolutely against all of this are also opposed to the Rwanda scheme because they say, why are you spending millions on it instead of just stopping the boats?
And the new argument coming from the UK government is, well, because people are now absconding to Ireland, therefore the Rwanda scheme is working because they don't want to be sent to Rwanda. But that also implies that, well, they've, you know, still traversed the whole of the UK. They have still entered into the UK illegally, which is, surely that's the problem here.
Massive police operation underway in Kent as police look for this man. And I think I can help them with this as to who he is and where he's from. So let's have a look at him. It wasn't me, is the claim. Is that Ryland Clark? That is the
I have to say, if I was Ryland Clark, I'd be rather insulted that people thought this was me. I think Ryland Clark is rather better looking. I mean, I think this happens quite often, that somebody vaguely looks like a celebrity. I mean, obviously, he's got a sense of humour, dear old Ryland, and has said, not me, before anybody goes. Too many people say, we think that it's you. Whether Kent Police will find their robber is another matter.
What's he accused of having done? Just a casual robbery?
Yeah.
Casual robbery.
An attempted robbery in Maidstone.
What, sorry?
An attempted robbery.
So he's obviously a rather inefficient robber.
I saw, you know, the shoplifting is so bad now in London. I saw about 3 different shoplifting incidents in just the past 2 days.
Did you?
Crazy.
Tell us. What did you see?
I saw someone actually just Paddington nearby here. Someone just, you know, nick a load of stuff and run away from like one of the sort of Pret-style shops. Saw someone run away in, like, you know, the Tesco near my work. You know. And then like a much bigger confrontation in another Tesco. So you just see it all the time now. So an attempted robbery.
Any sympathy for what you saw? I mean, did you look and you say, well, they're charging 12 quid for that sandwich or whatever? I don't blame this person. Or someone, was it someone homeless? Is someone who you felt needed it?
It didn't look like it to me.
Yeah.
That's not the sense that I got.
What I don't understand is how come the police are issuing an e-fit for somebody who attempted a burglary but didn't even succeed, and yet other people report actual burglaries of huge value up to and including cars, and nobody even attends, let alone produces anything.
I mean, it depends how threatening. It depends how threatening that was.
Well, actually, I've seen a lot of stuff on TV with shopkeepers talking about being threatened, that they have video and everything, and nothing happens. I mean, that actually shopkeepers, I think mostly outside London, I mean, are hiring people because the police won't do it. I mean, I'm with you, Isabel. It seems absolutely crazy.
Bonkers, doesn't it? Yeah.
And then the ETH, just the quality of it as well is extraordinary. It doesn't look like any human, let alone Riley.
It's the general gist, I think.
You'd think with I don't know, with AI now, able to construct
anyone with dark
incredible...
hair and a beard could kind of be under the same...
Am I in trouble? Please don't come for me.
Well, yeah, you were linked to these 3 incidents in the Paddington area. Where do you want to go next,
looking at the Daily Mail and the...
Taylor Swift?
Taylor Swift, where's she page 3?
She's here. Oh, no, she's not. That's page 5.
What this story is that the BBC, because the BBC does news alerts, and over 11 million people, including me, have it on the phone, so that when there's a news alert, you have the BBC, you have the news, so you think, oh, God,
guess what?
Really
GB News also does that, just so you know.
Right.
You can get updates from other sources.
Isabel, I do get a lot of you.
Sorry about that.
I got a thing about you and what's his name, Galloway, yesterday.
Oh, sorry about that.
So I do get you, but I also get, and I am a news junkie. I just love news. I love breaking news. And then what you get from the BBC, and this is a complaint, is non-news. And so twice, a number of times, they've been pushing the Taylor Swift album, which is not news, right? And actually is... Well, and people are complaining to the Daily Mail, saying, you know, we're tired of this. And actually, I think we should stick to just news.
Do you know what gets me, Scarlett? On news, we've got a lot of restrictions about what we can talk about or what we can't talk about. And people say, oh, well, you can't talk about that. That's advertising. But somehow it's not deemed to be advertising if you're talking about her record or her book or whatever. I mean, this basically puts money in her pocket.
But she transcends celebrity, doesn't she? She's quite almost a political person. They say that if she endorses a candidate, that's the election won. She's spoken out about artists not getting funding from streaming services. You know, she's a huge feminist. So there's lots of issues that she speaks out about. She's an ally, isn't she? LGBT ally. She talks about that a lot. Does she move into the news sphere, I would ask, more than perhaps other stars?
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, that she is much, but I still think that saying that it's news to review her album is actually pushing it. And no,
BBC does lots of cultural coverage of you know, art galleries and exhibitions.
But it's not
news.
What I'm saying is it's not a news alert.
It's not a breaking news
and when
story.
I look at the app, or you know, you get that BBC loud push button thing, you think, oh God, who's resigned? Or, you know, has there been a terror attack? Who's died? And then you read what the BBC Arts editor thinks about Taylor Swift's album, you're a bit disappointed. Or, you know, a bit surprised. And also, it's just the volume of coverage is also what's been criticised. There's numerous articles. She was the subject of Thought for the Day on the Today programme.
Well, people were asking me, had I ever interviewed Taylor Swift? And I said, no, never met her, no, nothing, no, don't know about her. And then someone sent me an interview, a 7-minute interview, sit-down live interview that I did with
So memorable.
So memorable. I was sat and very beautiful-looking woman, and this was maybe about 10 years ago, and I have no recollection of it whatsoever. But
bless her.
There we are.
So she said nothing interesting during.
Well, maybe she wasn't interesting then. Maybe she's interesting now. Like you two. More interesting stuff at 20 past 7.
As we get older.
We're going to get a check on the forecast now. Mixed bag of weather. Apparently it was a bit misty and foggy this morning. Sunny yesterday. What's in store today? Here's Aidan McGibbon.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. A lot of cloud today with some showers, but there'll be more heavy rain arriving into the south overnight, even some thunderstorms. Initially, the best of any sunshine will be across the western parts, and there'll be some decent sunny spells around during the morning. Northwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Wales keep those sunny spells well into the afternoon. Otherwise, increasing amounts of cloud arrive from the east with some showery rain, especially for eastern Scotland, parts of central and eastern England. But away from the showery rain, actually it's going to be relatively warm, particularly where we get some sunshine through central parts, Northern Ireland, western Scotland, temperatures up into the high teens, perhaps even 20, 21 Celsius. Nevertheless, looking towards the south into the evening, we've got this area of heavy rain moving up, perhaps even some thunderstorms across some southern counties of England into South Wales during the early hours of tomorrow. And those thunderstorms could be accompanied by frequent lightning, some very heavy rainfall. Be a noisy night in places, but they'll be hit and miss, and they will be clearing away across South Wales and the southwest of England during the morning tomorrow, leaving a legacy of low cloud and outbreaks of drizzly rain. Elsewhere, brighter skies develop after a mostly dry night. Plenty of sunshine for Scotland, Northern Ireland into much of central and eastern England, but some parts of northeast England and eastern Scotland will be affected by low cloud. That'll make things feel much cooler.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding in Tyrone. The A5 is closed in both directions along Dewgarry Road to the southeast of Omer after an accident. In Flintshire, the A541 remains closed in both directions at Mould, where they're damping down after a fire that broke out yesterday afternoon. The M1 in Bedfordshire is closed northbound from junction at 11A for the A5 north of Dunstable to 13 at Bedford for emergency repairs to damage caused after an accident and large fuel spill yesterday. There are queues from junction 11, the A505 Luton and Dunstable turn, and queues heading north up the A5 to Hockliffe, where you're diverting. And on the M26 in Kent, there are 3 miles of westbound queues towards the M25, where it's down to a single lane for emergency repairs. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
You're the winner of the Great British Giveaway.
I'm slipping neck. Oh dear.
Oh my God, are you joking?
You're joking. Really? Seriously, it's not a wine. What is it?
Oh my God, this is amazing. Thank you.
The next winning call could be answered by you. For a chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good morning. It is 7 o'clock. It is Wednesday, the 1st of May, and you are very welcome to breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Nice to have you on board. Leading the news this morning, a man tasered and arrested after multiple stabbings in London at this time yesterday remains in custody, but is yet to be interviewed because of his injuries.
It's crunch day for the Scottish Government. They face a vote of no confidence put forward by Labour, and if lost, all ministers would be forced to step down.
King Charles tells cancer patients on his return to public duty that his diagnosis came as a bad shock, as the government launches the biggest prostate cancer trial of its kind to test the effectiveness of techniques treating the disease.
The first failed asylum seeker has been sent to Rwanda and given a fee to do so, funded by the taxpayer. They've left, having been rejected by the asylum system. They didn't arrive on a small boat via the Channel.
Blackpool prepares for its by-election. That happens tomorrow. We gauge the mood there as rival parties aim to heap more pressure on the Conservatives with time ticking away towards a general election.
And in sports news this morning, Harry Kane scores. Of course he does. His 43rd goal of the season as Bayern Munich draw 2-2 with Real Madrid in the Champions League semi-final first leg. Ipswich Town now just 1 point away from being promoted to the Premier League along with Leicester. And Nike are having to redesign their pro baseball uniforms because they rip easily and they have see-through pants.
Nothing wrong with that.
A lot of cloud today with a few showers around, but some heavy, potentially thundery rain arrives overnight in the far south. I'll have the full details in the forecast coming up shortly.
So we are talking about that horrific incident that happened yesterday. Former Chief Superintendent of the Met Police, Kevin Hurley, has now called for all police officers to be armed.
Yeah, if we've got any feedback on this, anything on your side, please send them to us this morning. I'm speaking to the production team, not you, the viewers out there. I'd like to see what folk say, what their opinions are on all of this. This man was tasered, then arrested yesterday on suspicion of murder after he completely slashed a 14-year-old.
Yeah, 5 people were also treated for injuries in hospital with dramatic footage showing the moment that he was stopped successfully by police using tasers. Assistant Commissioner Louisa Rolfe said police have found no trace of a prior incident involving the suspect, whilst the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, says there is no place for violence like this on our streets.
Let's get former Metropolitan Police Detective Peter Blexley and his view on all of this. You were on an hour ago, Peter, and you were quite strong at that stage that you thought that arming police officers would change the effectiveness and the way the police forces around the country would be viewed. Do you still stand by that?
Yes, I do. I think that suddenly arming each and every frontline uniformed police officer, who of course have contact with the public every day, will fundamentally change the relationship and the shape and direction of British policing. So as things stand, whilst I am open to persuasion and alternative views, I'm against it. However, having said that, there is a very pressing matter that needs to be addressed as a matter of absolute urgency and may come as a surprise to your viewers and listeners, and that is not every frontline police officer can carry a taser. Now, if yesterday's events...
What do you mean? Well, they can't. What's preventing them carrying a taser?
They are not authorised, they are not selected, and they are not trained.
Can they choose not to carry a taser?
Yes, they can, but, however, I think the time has come now, if we set the firearms discussion aside for a moment, to focus on tasers. I firmly believe that every frontline police officer should have a taser. Yesterday's events have shown how effective they can be in murderous, dangerous, deadly circumstances. And quite frankly, if we expect our frontline police officers to carry a tourniquet so that they can deal with the effects of knife crime, then at the very least we should expect and allow and give them a taser.
Somebody messaged us in earlier to say that thick clothing can prevent tasers from working. Is that true?
Well, some people have been resistant to tasers. It is a small minority, but in the past, some people have been repeatedly tasered and still pose a threat. But they are very much a minority.
How many times can you discharge a taser from one taser gun?
Well,
is it just the once?
No, you can
Multiple,
fire them. You can send the pulse repeatedly and for a longer period of time. But they are things that, of course, do not have an endless capability. You can't shoot them again and again and again.
Let's reflect on some of the thoughts that people have been sharing with us this morning. I just wanted to read one massively in favour of what Eamonn's been saying this morning, arming the police, and one quite against it. Linda Durham-Payne says, absolutely arm the police, save more lives and save the taxpayer money from putting them in overcrowded prisons. Jackie says, Eamonn, if the young man wielding this machete was your son, would you really be calling for the police to shoot them dead?
Of course I would. That's a really stupid argument.
Get arrested and put into a mental health institution to get the help they need. Where would you rather visit your child, in prison or a morgue?
If my child carried out that sort of murder yesterday that we dealt with, and maybe more people might die as a result of what was going on. The only place he should be is dead, really. I think there's just no excuse for, understanding these people, and that guy last year in Nottingham and his mental health, and forgive him because of that. Goodness me. Valerie, we are one of the only countries in the world who do not arm their police. Jason says police should be armed ASAP. The country is out of control for knife crime. And Jason, Peter, this may well be a point that this is becoming more common. We're seeing this around the world. We see this in shopping malls. We see this in places that are very easy targets. And these guys believe they can get away with it. There's no deterrent with this. Well, what do you think? Should we stack up and ramp up how officers are armed?
I believe in deterrence, but clearly let's take Nottingham, Sydney and Australia, which we've alluded to murderously recently, and yesterday's events, clearly there is a growing occasions when these kind of attacks are happening. What lies behind them is possibly for not only the police investigation, but for those learned people with letters after their names to explore. I fear that there is illegal drug use behind some of these activities. We know Valdo Calacane, who went on that murderous rampage in Nottingham, used illegal drugs. That is an indisputable fact. We have an increasing situation with people suffering from schizophrenia and other kind of psychoses, and it is also a known fact that frequent cannabis use, very strong cannabis use, and I have nothing to suggest that yesterday's murderous person used it, but I'm just saying in general terms, there is increasing evidence that frequent drug use is causing some of these psychoses. We need thorough investigations to establish if these people are in fact coming from drug-taking backgrounds and whether or not...
And also how they arm themselves, Peter, as well. The fact that these weapons are available and obviously the penalties being imposed for possessing something like this samurai sword mustn't be enough.
Yes, but quite possibly, to allude to this armed police thing again, armed police officers would not have stopped Valdo Calacane. The outcome might have been different. He might have been shot rather than arrested. Armed police wouldn't have prevented yesterday's situation occurring because he was tasered after the murderous events. Same with Sydney, albeit in that case, the man was shot dead after he'd taken lives. So arming police might not prevent these events. Of course, we won't ever really know.
I think, Peter, it makes people think twice. It's bound to. I mean, I'll just we referred to it in the last hour. I have to go back to it again, that you do have a police service or police force in the UK that is fully armed. Every single officer is trained in firearms and they all carry weapons, they all carry guns, and that is the Police Service of Northern Ireland. And all these doom and gloom and things we hear that it'll become like the Wild West and shootouts, it doesn't happen in Northern Ireland. Why would it happen anywhere else?
Of course, the arming of police in Northern Ireland comes from a very different historical background from Scotland, England and Wales, and therefore we need to apply a different context, I would suggest. I remain against the routine arming of all frontline cops, but I think Sir Mark Rowley, Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, and every Chief Constable now has an absolute duty of care to ensure that all frontline officers are issued and trained with tasers because his staff are not cannon fodder. 2 heroic officers got injured yesterday, both requiring surgery. If the police are struggling to recruit and retain people, which they are, then I think they need to be given the tools to protect themselves, which for now, I would suggest, is each and every frontline cop having a taser.
What about amnesties, knife amnesties? These were big when I was growing up. We used to hear about them all the time. A huge number of people would hand in their weapons and we saw knife crime go down. Why don't we have more or any of these anymore?
We're in the grip of a knife crime crisis, particularly in London, but in other places. Look at tragic events in Bristol in recent weeks and months. There is a growing problem. For some reason, people, when they leave their front doors, go phone, keys, knife. What on earth is driving that? Academics will tell you there's a variety of things, like absent parenting, children being excluded from school, drug gangs and the such like. Whatever it is, we need a patrolling police presence, utilising a lot more stop and search, so that perhaps that will form some part of a deterrent. I'm not suggesting for a moment it would have prevented yesterday's tragic events, but in broader terms, with regards to knife crime, that ugly, recurring subject of stop and search needs to be enforced, needs to be done more frequently, needs to be done politely and firmly.
I would just ask people who are watching these pictures that we're transmitting here, beautiful sunny morning, this was at this time yesterday morning.
Broad daylight.
And you look at this guy and you say, what possesses anyone to crash his car into a home, to murder a 14-year-old boy, to stab various police officers and other people around the place? And that was what was motivating that guy at 7 a.m. in the morning. Absolutely incredible. And the other thing I find strange is two of the top-rated programmes on BBC One, Hope Street and I think it's called Law and Order, are two police series based and filmed in Northern Ireland.
Incredibly popular.
So I find it incredible that, you know, when guns are so much part of policing in Northern Ireland, that they can reconstruct scenes, something like this or whatever, in the same scenario, and nobody's really blinking an eye at it, and they are rating so well on BBC television that Belfast and Donegal and various places are seen as great places to film crime. Incredible.
It would be remiss of me not to mention the brilliant work done by the National Crime Agency and British police forces to keep firearms off the streets. They are pretty successful in doing that. And firearms offences are not running away anywhere near like these dreadful knife crime offences are. So in that regards, law enforcement does a pretty good job of keeping firearms off the street. If we suddenly arm each and every cop, one of my concerns is that villains will go, if all the cops have got guns, then we all better have guns, and there might be a proliferation of gun crime.
Okay.
Lorraine says we need to get a grip of this situation with violent crime in this country, or we are doomed. Karen, too many innocent people now being murdered on our streets due to out-of-control knife and gun crime. About time we reintroduced capital punishment to the country. Peter, always fascinating to hear from you. Thank you very much indeed. You've got people talking and thinking this morning. Thank you very much.
On to politics now, and the Scottish Government faces a no-confidence vote later after First Minister Humza Yousaf said earlier this week that he was going to resign.
Well, his resignation came just 13 months after he replaced Nicola Sturgeon as Scotland's leader, and it sparks another leadership contest in the Scottish National Party. The crisis in the SNP gives an opportunity for the Labour Party to regain ground ahead of any general election.
Well, let's get the thoughts this morning of our political commentator, Andy Williams. Good morning again to you, Andy. How do you see today playing out? And I suppose, does anybody stand to gain in all of this other than the Labour Party? It's sort of clearing their path to power, isn't it?
Well, I think it is a significant vote because if it were to pass, the entire Scottish Government would have to resign, all ministers would have to go. But it does look unlikely to pass because the Greens have withdrawn their support for the motion. The Greens, Labour, opposition parties in Scotland got what they wanted when Humza Yousaf resigned on Monday. So they've got their scalp. But in terms of Labour, absolutely, this is a massive boon to them. If Labour are going to win a big majority at the UK general election, they need to be picking up SNP seats. And that this chaos makes that increasingly likely.
It's also very naive, isn't it? I mean, it just strikes me this didn't have to be for Yousaf. He didn't have to be in this position, yet he chose to be, or was incredibly badly advised. He said he was naive.
Naive or maybe arrogant. I mean, I think actually to think that you can bin your coalition partners and say, we don't really need you, we can survive. And, what I found incredible was the SNP were out there saying, actually, it's down to opposition parties to support us. They need to get on side. Why should they? Why should they? They've no interest in the SNP staying in power. They want to oust them. They don't want to see independence in Scotland. So I think very naive, but also just an arrogant and a very politically an unsound move for sure, and that's ended his career.
There's something else I want to talk to you about, this Rwanda situation. Just want to make this clear to people if you're not getting this quite straight. So one person has been, exported,
deported, voluntarily.
To Rwanda. What do you make of this situation? The fact that this person enters the country illegally, they then said, oh, little mistake there. If we give you $3,000 and put you on a plane, flew you to Rwanda and sorted you out with a job and a future there, would you take that? And they're saying, yeah, of course, yeah.
Quite a sweet deal, isn't it, really? I mean, it's not just $3,000. As you say, it's 5 years' worth of board and lodgings. So the British government is paying the Rwandan government to put people up for 5 years. That's why this scheme is so expensive. So I think we've already made a £170 million down payment just to get this off the ground, just to get the agreement in place. If 300 migrants are deported to Rwanda, it will cost £2 million per person. It's just...
But to be clear, this is different from the Rwanda bill that passed through Parliament last week, and we are expecting the first flights to take off in, 10 to 12 weeks.
Yes.
And those are people who are being deported irrespective of whether they've had their case heard or not. They're just being sent because they've come across the channel legally. This person's had their case heard, they've been rejected, there is no right to stay, and they've voluntarily agreed to go. So there is a distinction in these two subjects.
Well,
apart from the destination, which is Rwanda.
There's a wide agreement
money that we're paying for it to happen. Why don't you just put them on a plane and fly them to goodness knows where?
Look, I think
Antarctica.
I think the important thing here, I mean, your guest about 20 minutes ago said stopping the boats is the test. I disagree. Stopping the boats is not the test, because stopping the boats only deals with a sliver of the total number of people coming into Britain every year. Last year, 1.1 million people were granted visas legally to come into the UK. Now, actually, the government, it was reported in the Times this morning, the government is making progress on bringing legal migration down. I know, Isabel, we've talked before about student visas, for example.
Yeah, they're clamping down on dependents, aren't they?
Clamping down on dependents of students coming into the country. Those numbers are falling. Those numbers have gone down by about 25% quarter on quarter. So there's a reasonably good story to tell there. But I think the government's mistake is they've staked everything on stopping the boats on illegal crossings, which they can't stop.
It's a bugbear of mine that basically we're bringing in legally all these foreign students to prop up these universities that, to be honest, have been vastly overexpanded over the years. Way too many of these institutions to be able to sustain them all. Now we're bringing in, last year, nearly 750,000 people to keep these institutions open. I mean, 600-something thousand foreign students, and yet we're all focusing so much on this 30,000 people, many of whom are coming in from places like Afghanistan, where they have a legitimate concern about their safety.
I couldn't agree more. So many of these, people don't stand on the shores of Calais and think, oh, I quite fancy making a dangerous trip where there's a reasonable chance of me drowning. They think, I'm desperate, I need to get somewhere safe. And I think the government's made a huge mistake in terms of pretty much staking the general election on this. It's like their one bet. By the way, I saw your excellent interview with Victoria Atkins, the minister, yesterday morning, and I was shocked at the lack of grip the government clearly have on this situation.
So this was about the asylum seekers that they are trying to round up for these first deportation flights, and they've lost more than half of them into the ether. They just can't find them.
Yeah.
And she just couldn't answer that. She said, don't worry, law enforcement will track them down. That's further expense to the taxpayer, and she didn't seem concerned by that.
It's remarkable. And so I think that, the position this morning is one person, according to The Sun, has voluntarily, they've taken their $3,000, they've taken their 5 years' worth of board and lodgings in Rwanda, and, presumably this is supposed to be chalked up as a success for the government. Actually, it's just a record of failure.
Yeah. An expensive record of failure.
Very expensive.
Thank you very much indeed. Lovely listening to you, Andy. Thank you very much indeed. Andy Williams is a political commentator. Thank you very much. The time, 20 minutes past the hour of 7 o'clock. Other stories coming into the newsroom are these. 2 men have been charged with causing criminal damage following the felling of the famous sycamore gap tree in Northumberland. The iconic tree, which stood next to Hadrian's Wall for 200 years, was chopped down in September last year. The big question is, why?
A new prostate cancer screening initiative has been called a pivotal moment that could save thousands of lives. The Transform project aims to reduce deaths from the disease by 40%, with doctors collating data to help make treatments more effective. Prostate cancer kills 12,000 men in Britain every year.
Britain's level of immigration is falling, says the Home Office. Figures show a decline in the number of foreign workers and students coming to the UK. Visas issued to skilled workers, health and care staff and students have fallen by a quarter compared to last year. Certainly in the southeast in the London area, very foggy, very misty this morning. Has that dispersed? Let's go to Aidan McGivern and find out.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. A lot of cloud today with some showers, but there'll be more heavy rain arriving into the south overnight, even some thunderstorms. Initially, the best of any sunshine will be across the western parts, and there'll be some decent sunny spells around during the morning. Northwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Wales keep those sunny spells well into the afternoon. Otherwise, increasing amounts of cloud arrive from the east with some showery rain, especially for eastern Scotland, parts of central and eastern England. But away from the showery rain, actually it's going to be relatively warm, particularly where we get some sunshine through central parts, Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, temperatures up into the high teens, perhaps even 20, 21 Celsius. Nevertheless, looking towards the south into the evening, we've got this area of heavy rain moving up, perhaps even some thunderstorms across some southern counties of England into South Wales during the early hours of tomorrow. And those thunderstorms could be accompanied by frequent lightning, some very heavy rainfall. Be a noisy night in places, but they'll be hit and miss, and they will be clearing away across South Wales and the southwest of England during the morning tomorrow, leaving a legacy of low cloud and outbreaks of drizzly rain. Elsewhere, brighter skies develop after a mostly dry night. Plenty of sunshine for Scotland, Northern Ireland into much of central and eastern England, but some parts of northeast England and eastern Scotland will be affected by low cloud. That'll make things feel much cooler.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, it certainly feels as finally summer is just around the corner, and we want to make it sizzle for you. So we are offering an incredible £20,000 in cash in our latest Great British Giveaway.
We've blown the budget by giving you the chance to win a totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For a chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. Lots more coming your way, including all the sport with Paul Coit. He's only been here a little while at the channel, just can't remember his name. Paul Coit, that chap, he's coming in to talk about his favourite footballer, Harry Kane, and rising star Jude Bellingham when they met in the Champions League.
OK, Paul next.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from tomorrow,
The people decide.
As the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections.
we'll take you through the night as the first results come in.
And we'll pick up at breakfast
with the very best guests and analysis.
And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from tomorrow at midnight on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News with Dubes & Co from 6, followed by Farage at 7. At 8, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg addresses the state of the nation. And at 9, join Patrick Christie's Tonight, followed by Headliners at 11. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Dubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We've got Paul Coyton, he's got the sports news, and you know, this is the time of the year everybody buys see the replica shirts. There's a lot of stuff on Instagram and whatever predicting what our various clubs are going to be wearing next year.
Yeah.
Don't know how many of these are true or not.
Yeah,
but,
you always see those, and I'm sure someone will put something on and they just make it up. Yeah. And then it's, you know what social media is like. People put it on for clicks. Oh, there's a person I want to mention, by the way, who said hello on Monday, who's a fan of the show and who watches every morning. And just to give you a clue, he was the manager of Gainsborough, Burton, Scarborough, Notts County, Torquay, Huddersfield, Plymouth, Oldham, Bury, Sheffield United, Crystal Palace, Queen's Park Rangers, Leeds, Rotherham.
Neil Warnock. Good morning, Neil.
Morning,
very good to have Neil there as a viewer, which is very nice.
Yeah.
Where did you see Neil?
Well, it was at Spurs. He was doing a little managing thing for
sort of
it was like a corporate, and there was Neil Warnock, very nice man, and he always sends his regards to you.
Yeah. And always got on well with Neil. Yeah, that's true. Can we talk about? We're talking about outfits and uniforms and things in baseball.
Do you want to do the baseball?
Yeah. So Nike have made these MLB uniforms.
Yeah.
So what's the problem?
Right. Well, MLB, Major League Baseball, London series, by the way, that's coming to London again. New York Mets against Philadelphia Phillies. Baseball itself is suffering a little bit. They're having a lot of trouble with going with the times, because baseball uniforms, for example...
Oh, so stupid looking.
I know, they're
like pyjamas.
But they've never changed. Have a look at this. This is one from many, many years ago. This is Detroit Tigers. Now, look, if you look at that, so that's, I'm guessing, what, 40s? But the actual uniforms don't look any different today, whereas you have football kits. Yeah. In the 80s, the shorts got crazy short, and then they got long again, and then the design is different. Baseball has pretty much stayed the same, but they do have some problems. Now, Nike have now taken over the making of the uniforms, and they make the uniforms or the kit for every major league team. So they have the contract. Yeah. It's a billion dollar contract that they have. But they've made these They call them Nike Vapor Premier uniforms. It help mobility, moisture management. Have you ever had a problem with moisture management?
Well, I can see why it would be a problem
you think
for some,
so?
for some people.
It's quite hot sometimes.
Yes.
And also fit as well. But the problem is that they're so thin. Not only have the pants, I mean, we call them trousers, they're see-through, but they're ripping. Have a look at this. Look, this is actual proof of what's been going on regularly in baseball in the States. Look. Slides. Look at that. That's it. And that's what they do. They slide. Do you remember in Charlie Brown? Slide, Charlie Brown, slide.
Has this been historically a problem, or is this just something with the new kit?
It's with the new stuff because it's so thin, and obviously when it helps the moisture management, it's ripping.
Gotcha.
So, you know, people are showing far too much. So what they're having to do now is actually they're going to complete tailor options with high-quality zippers and stitching standards that prevent blowouts. I'm not sure what that means, Eamonn.
OK. But the thing is, you know the way here in this country we wear football tops as leisure? Like you go
leisure wear.
Yeah, you go on holiday.
On holiday.
Wear it on an airplane or whatever it happens to be. Would the Yanks do it with baseball?
Some do. And I think they look better. They, if you go to baseball in the States or when they do it in London, they all wear the gear. But they all look very, very similar. You know, because they're all of a similar look. But it's not, I don't think it's like when you go to Stansted Airport before you go on holiday.
Still don't like them. Premier League going to get more exposure. We just say congratulations to Kieran McKenna and Ipswich. Well, they're not congratulations
not yet.
1 point away.
1 point.
Champions League last night, Bayern 2, Real Madrid 2. But tell us about the Premier League in the USA and what's going to happen there.
Well, NBC own the contract for the Premier League over in America, and this is a £2 billion contract. So this is the biggest contract the Premier League have, and it's getting very big in the States. So there's now word... I mean, they tried this in 2007 with the 39th game, but now they're saying that they would like 2 games to be played in the States every year in the Premier League. You know this is going to happen. You know it's going to happen. And it worries me. And it's great that it's worldwide. It's great that everybody's paying attention to the Premier League. But I just thought it's a matter of time. Nothing's been said, nothing's been signed, nothing's been done. But I'm sure that there are teams, I'm sure most of the Premier League teams, as much as they may deny it now, will want to play over in the States. They probably forfeit a home game because they know they'll get support, and then support over America. That means merchandise, and then it means
cash. Are you going to get people in America supporting Burnley, for instance, instead of being at Turf Moor, they're going to be at, you know, somewhere in New York?
You know what? It could well work, because a team like Burnley would probably think, you know, that'd be great. We'll get a bit of exposure in the States. Suddenly there's, hey, I love that Burnley, you know, and then they'll start supporting them, and then it's money's going to start coming in. But as long as it doesn't set a precedent, and then we end up playing goodness knows how many games in the States, that would be awful.
Yeah, well, the Wrexham documentary series on, is it Netflix or whatever, I don't know what it's on, or Prime, or I don't know where it is. But it restarts again this week. On Friday.
They're going again, are they?
Going again.
They're going again. And then, because they're playing games, they play games in the States before the season starts, and then they'll have friendlies, so then they can see them. But I think it's just going to be a matter of time, whether we like it or not, that there's going to be games in the States.
Hey, well, there you are. On NBC. They'll be looking for presenters for that.
I think it's a very good idea. What do you think?
Not very good, but cheap.
Yeah,
we could be,
well, cheap, and we'll have a laugh, and we'll talk a bit about, we'll do the Spurs-Manchester United game. Absolutely, let's go for it.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate all of that. Paul Coit there with your sport and fashion news all next into one.
Always.
Blackpool South residents heading to the polls tomorrow after the resignation of their former MP. We'll find out what they want from the next MP.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Tyrone, the A5 is closed in both directions along Dewgray Road to the southeast of Omer after an accident. In Flintshire, the A541 is closed in both directions at Mould after a fire that broke out yesterday afternoon. Now, the M1 in Bedfordshire has reopened northbound from junction 11A for the A5 north of Dunstable up to 13 at Bedford. after emergency repairs to repair damage caused after an accident yesterday. Still queues though from junction 11, the A505 Luton and Dunstable turn, and on the M25 in Kent, the inside lanes closed each way again today for emergency repairs near junction 5 for the M26. There are queues from junction 4 at Orpington, and there are 3 miles of queues along the M26 approaching the M25. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The People's
Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Let's cover this by-election in Blackpool South. People heading to the polls tomorrow, that's going to be after the resignation of the former MP. Often recognised as one of the most deprived areas of the whole country, voters in Blackpool will be demanding real and meaningful change from whoever is successful.
Our North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper paid the area a visit to find out more.
The world-famous Blackpool Promenade. Once upon a time, people flocked from all over the globe to visit this iconic seaside resort. But in recent years, the town has gained a rather different reputation. In fact, the most recent government figures place 8 of the 10 most deprived neighbourhoods in the country here in Blackpool.
Have you enjoyed your stay?
The Royal Boston Hotel first opened its doors back in 1934. Since then, the promenade has completely changed, and not necessarily for the better.
Blackpool can be beautiful, it can be wonderful, but it also can look very run down when you drive up and down the promenade. So it needs investment, and I think there's people willing to invest, but it's just unlocking that key around how we can do that and how we can actually change those buildings and that structure.
Tomorrow, the people of Blackpool South will head to the polls to choose their new MP. For John, the successful candidate needs to secure the town's future by making decisions now.
A huge part of what the MP is going to need to do is to create that job and those opportunities and work with local businesses to create that opportunity. Because we see, and I see, a huge amount of talent leaving Blackpool. They're the ambassadors for the town, they're the future of Blackpool.
Here at the heart of Blackpool's tourist economy, its tower still stands, its illuminations still shine. And yet now, for its people, they feel it's time for change.
Blackpool South's about to get a new MP. What do you want them to do for Blackpool?
To invest more money in the mental health services around Blackpool, because there isn't much to offer for young people.
They need to invest more money in the people of Blackpool rather than the tourist areas.
Make it safer, make it a better community, especially with the cost of living crisis.
To do more for Blackpool residents, more for the homeless,
which they don't actually do. They place them into hotels, leave them for 3 months, and if they don't find a place within them 3 months, they're moved. But I'm one of them people.
I think it's quite sad, actually.
Yes.
It's very sad, because Blackpool was, like, massive.
A once glittering tourist trap, the Blackpool of today seems to have lost some of its sparkle. And for its local people, they can only hope their new MP can restore the town to happier days. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
Full list of candidates standing Blackpool South are Stephen Black, Independent, Mark Butcher, Reform, Andrew Cregan, Lib Dems, Howling Lord Hope, Official Munster Raving, Looney Party, David Jones, Conservatives, Kim Knight, Alliance for Freedom and Democracy.
Damon Sharp for the non-poll party, Ben Thomas for the Greens and Chris Webb for Labour.
Right, back after the break with all the stories making the news in the papers.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, a woman who 25 years ago, at the age of just 14, tortured and killed her 71-year-old grandmother was last month released from prison on licence.
But this isn't the first time she's been let out. Sarah Davey has been bailed and reincarcerated no less than 7 times.
Well, to debate this, we're joined by former Detective Chief Inspector Colin Sutton, famed for catching the notorious killer of Millie Dowler, Levi Belfield, and GB News' own Patrick Christie's.
I think we have to qualify that where the killer is a child, and we have to accept that to consign somebody to be in prison for 60, 70 or 80 years is probably something that we ought to think twice about. So I understand why this happens. I understand the outrage. I really understand the outrage. I think that 14-year-olds who kill should be given a chance to rehabilitate? Yes, I do. Do I think that somebody who's had 7 such chances and blown them away deserves an 8th chance? Then probably I think that's a lot more doubtful.
I would have thought that by chance, sort of 3 or 4, they'd have got the picture, but clearly not. Patrick, what do you make of it all?
Well, some people are born evil, aren't they? And why should we have to suffer to have them back out on the streets? There are some crimes that are so serious that you should pay for it either with your life or for the rest of your life. This was a sadistic murder, the details of which absolutely cannot be read out on air at this particular time of day. There are 3 issues here. Is this justice for the families of victims? I just think a release like this is a slap in the face, really, to us all. It's another example of soft justice. And just because she's a child, well, she was old enough to commit the heinous crime she committed.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from tomorrow,
the people decide.
As the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections.
We'll take you through the night as the first results come in.
And we'll pick up at breakfast
with the very best guests and analysis.
And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from tomorrow at midnight on GB News.
Goodness me, imagine this, lying in bed at night, feeling a presence in the room, a buzzing going on, something that's making you uneasy. What could it possibly be? We've got Fraser Myers and we've got Scarlett Maguire in the studio. Scarlett's going to tell us what the buzzing was. Scarlett.
Well, it wasn't just a grown-up hearing the buzzing. It was a toddler who kept saying to her mum, "There are monsters in my room," and the mother thought she was exaggerating. And actually, it was a beehive in the wall of her room. And when
the proper people came because the parents said, why are bees flying into our attic? And they were flying down into this hall, and they knocked a hole in it, and the bees just swarmed out, and then this honey came out.
Wow.
That looked like blood because it was so dark and just. I mean, it was disgusting.
But are pest control allowed to get rid of that? Because aren't bees supposed to be protected? 50,000 bees with a huge honey hive is probably in some way...
Well, the hive wasn't for... I don't think they killed the bees. They let the bees out, and I think they then destroyed the hive. But I remember sometime when my kids were young and they were playing football in the garden, and there was this strange thing in the outhouse where we kept our boiler. And I called somebody, and it was a wasp's nest. And he said at any stage they could have kicked a ball against that, and all the wasps would come out.
I was mowing my mother-in-law's lawn one summer, and her neighbours were keeping honeybees. Oh, I don't know if they were honeybees, bees. They had a beehive right on the periphery fence. And obviously the sound of the lawnmower really annoyed these bees, and I got attacked, and I'm actually allergic to bees, and I got bitten and had these huge swollen lumps behind my ears. And we just said to the neighbours what had happened, and they took it really badly and got rid of their bees, and they're not that friendly anymore. But what was I supposed to do? Just not mention it?
Soldier
It was
on,
a bit
just pretend
awkward.
nothing has happened.
Anyway.
And the lumps didn't go away. Meanwhile...
He's doing things with Eamonn. He's so polite, isn't he?
Meanwhile, Tom Cruise is having trouble with pigeons.
Tom Cruise is filming the new Mission Impossible film. He's filming it in London, in Trafalgar Square. There's going to be a scene with a riot. But because they don't want pigeons bothering the set, they've essentially hired a load of hawks and falcons to guard. And then that's just made me think, what a brilliant idea. Why can't we have that for the rest of London? Surely
They do
Joe Public...
that in lots of places. There's a shopping centre in Bristol, can't remember what it's called, Cabot Circus. And when they opened, it was brand new fanfare about 10 years ago, they brought in peregrine falcons as residents of this beautiful shopping centre to stop all the seagulls attacking and nesting.
Goodness.
Yeah, because it's obviously, terrible for people to have that fall on them. It's terrible for buildings because it's, quite acidic. But also, why can't Joe Public be protected from the pigeons, not just Tom Cruise and celebrities?
Absolutely. There are little vectors of disease.
So if you might, when Ken Livingstone first became Mayor of London, and we used to have people out there selling food for the pigeons, and then you'd have photos of you with pigeons all over you. And he paid them not to do it, to try and save Trafalgar Square from pigeons. I think he did think about falcons. So, I think it's something that we should think about.
But you do still see people feeding the birds, don't you? It's all very Mary Poppins.
Very Mary Poppins, absolutely.
Well, they may be terrible, but I have to say, Fraser, the Tom Cruise films, the Mission Impossible films, are amazing. And this is a continuation of the last one. So the last one was part one, and this is part two that they're doing. I think it's amazing for a man who's 63, 64 years of age to do his own stunts, to look as well as he looks, and have really good quality. The thing is, though, when you look at award ceremonies at the end of the year, this is what really annoys me. There'd be nothing for Mission Impossible.
No, that's true. And yeah, you're right. I think, Tom Cruise does deserve some praise because he's just a consummate entertainer. He knows what the public wants.
He has to be addicted, mate. No one could make the amount of films that he makes.
That's
absolutely
true.
Incredible.
And still doing the stunts, as you say.
Yeah, he must never have time off.
And he doesn't lecture us like other celebrities do. I don't know what his political opinions are.
He's a Scientologist.
I know what his. And I'd like to.
His child had to be born in silence. Don't you remember?
Keeps that stuff to himself in his
I
private
don't think
life.
He does. He's
Slightly
estranged from his children. Or that his children are estranged from him. We do know stuff about Tom Cruise. I do think he's a consummate actor, but I have problems with Scientology.
There's footage recently of him jumping off a cliff and waiting till the very last minute until he releases the parachute and refilming it, but maybe 8 times just to get it as late as possible before he pulls the plug. That takes not only a huge amount of skill, but a huge amount of, dare I say, cojones. I don't know how to say it in any other polite way, but guts, yes, that's a better
well,
way.
especially since he doesn't have to do it. He could get a stuntman to do those
enjoys
things.
it, as you say.
Incredible.
Yeah, he's obviously an adrenaline junkie and brilliant at it.
Fraser, I'm a bit confused now. Immigration levels have finally fallen after being at a record high after a crackdown on visas. This is front page of the Times today.
So between January and today, around 139,000 visas. I mean, that's down by 50,000 on around the same time last year. A lot of it is to do with the tightening of the rules around student visas. I mean, there was a lot of concern that people were using student visas, and possibly still are, as essentially as a kind of covert migration route, signing up to courses, paying a small fee, and then actually going on to work in the, work for Deliveroo or something like that. I mean, it was extraordinary, actually, when, the sort of post-Brexit rules. There are a huge number of students bringing over dependents and family members. Most of us who were students went to university to get away from our families, not to bring them with us. And even if you travelled abroad to go to university, you wouldn't bring extraneous family members. So it seems as if something, they've clocked onto a problem, and perhaps it's been...
Except the concern, I think most people would probably agree, there's no necessary need for dependents to come with these students to prop up these universities. But where there might be impacts on the labour market is in the NHS, in social care, where there is now this cap on not only minimum wage but also on dependents, and whether or not that might mean there are posts that just can't be filled.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what they're saying to carers is, because you don't earn very much money, you have to come over without your family. And they think, oh, yeah, so great. So we'll be on the minimum wage. We'll be living really poorly in Britain. And our children won't be there. And meanwhile, we have 100,000 vacancies in the care sector. This seems a rather silly thing to do.
Yeah. I'm just seeing here a headline in the paper today. We talk about this cost of living crisis. Olive oil. Olive oil now costs more than a good bottle of wine. The price has nearly doubled in 2 years. And this is because of a drought in Spain, spittlebug pests and gangs that steal whole trees. People that dig up trees out of the ground and sell them elsewhere. It's incredible. Have anybody noticed their olive oil going up in price?
I haven't noticed it, I have to say, but I do love olive oil and wine, so it's a great
Me
double
too.
whammy. Two of life's greatest.
I'm afraid, yes, I use olive oil very liberally and absolutely love it. I try not... Well, I do. I cooked something with it yesterday. People say you shouldn't cook in olive oil, is it?
Oh, the rules always change. I mean, they live forever in the Mediterranean, don't they?
Oh, yeah, no, it's that it means you're very rich if you cook with olive oil. So when I do crappy cooking, I do use olive oil.
Oh, I see. You do it for financial reasons, not for health reasons.
No, but olive oil is wonderful for health.
Well, it costs £8.40 for a litre of Sainsbury's own brand. And it can be, there's a brand here that they mention, and it costs £13.85. It's significantly more than a bottle of decent quality wine. They say. So that's quite... Apparently, if you actually drink olive oil, it detoxes your liver. It's apparently very, very good for liver detoxing.
How do you drink that?
You just drink it out of a glass.
You couldn't pay me to
a whole glass? Is it a shot glass? I don't know.
Can you mix it sort of with balsamic vinegar and salt and pepper?
And some focaccia bread, maybe. That sounds lovely.
No, I'm not sure of that. So let us know what you're finding difficulty with paying at the supermarkets at the moment. We'll reflect that in our next newspaper review, which will happen in about 40 minutes' time. So for the moment, Scarlett and Fraser, thank you very much indeed.
Lots coming your way at 8 o'clock. We've got Bridget Phillipson for Labour coming on, and then we have Kemi Badenoch talking about single-sex spaces and wanting you to get in touch with examples of where these are not being protected. More on that in the next hour, but in the meantime, we're going to get an update on your forecast with Aidan McGibbon.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. A lot of cloud today with some showers, but there'll be more heavy rain arriving into the south overnight, even some thunderstorms. Initially, the best of any sunshine will be across the western parts, and there'll be some decent sunny spells around during the morning. Northwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Wales keep those sunny spells well into the afternoon. Otherwise, increasing amounts of cloud arrive from the east with some showery rain, especially for eastern Scotland, parts of central and eastern England. But away from the showery rain, actually it's going to be relatively warm, particularly where we get some sunshine through central parts, Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, temperatures up into the high teens, perhaps even 20, 21 Celsius. Nevertheless, looking towards the south into the evening, we've got this area of heavy rain moving up, perhaps even some thunderstorms across some southern counties of England into South Wales during the early hours of tomorrow. And those thunderstorms could be accompanied by frequent lightning, some very heavy rainfall. Be a noisy night in places, but they'll be hit and miss, and they will be clearing away across South Wales and the southwest of England during the morning tomorrow, leaving a legacy of low cloud and outbreaks of drizzly rain. Elsewhere, brighter skies develop after a mostly dry night. Plenty of sunshine for Scotland, Northern Ireland into much of central and eastern England, but some parts of northeast England and eastern Scotland will be affected by low cloud. That will make things feel much cooler.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding in Tyrone. The A5 is closed in both directions along Dewgry Road to the southeast of Omagh after an accident. On Merseyside, the A59 is closed northbound from Dunnings Bridge Road at Aintree to the M58 at Switch Island after an accident. In Flintshire, the A541 is closed each way at Mould after a fire that broke out yesterday afternoon. On the M6 in the West Midlands, there's a lane closed southbound at Junction 10, the Walsall-Wolverhampton turn where someone's broken down. It's slow towards and past there. On the M25 in Kent, the inside lanes closed each way again today for emergency repairs near Junction 5 for the M26, with queues from Junction 4 at Orpington. And on the M26 in Kent, it's down to a single lane westbound on the approach to the M25 for emergency repairs, with roughly 3 miles of queues towards there. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
We've blown the budget by giving you the chance to win a totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For a chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The
People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nice to see you. 8 o'clock is the time on this Wednesday, the 1st of May. You're tuned into... What?
Sorry, just pinching the punch the first of the month and no returns of any kind. Yeah.
Oh.
It's May Day, no returns of any kind, I said.
Why?
That's the song. Yeah. Pinch, punch, first of the month and no returns of any kind. I got in there first.
But if I just pinched you really
No,
sore?
I said no returns of any kind.
I was talking today about someone who likes being pinched.
Who was that? Who was that? I'm pleading ignorance. I don't know. Nothing to do with me.
Anyway.
It's May Day, is what we were trying to say, and you are very welcome to breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
We've got a lot for you in the next hour, the show, including former Home Secretary Kemi Badenoch. We're going to be talking to her. The headlines today.
A man's been tasered and arrested after multiple stabbings in north-east London. He remains in custody but is yet to be interviewed, given the extent of his injuries.
Crunch day for the Scottish Government. They face a vote of no confidence put forward by Labour. If lost, all ministers would be forced to step down.
King Charles tells cancer patients on his return to public duty that his diagnosis came as a big shock. The government has also launched the biggest prostate cancer trial of its kind to test the effectiveness of techniques treating the disease.
The first failed asylum seeker has been sent to Rwanda and he gets paid for it, given a fee by the government. They have rejected the asylum system and don't arrive, and he didn't arrive on a small boat via the channel, but there you go.
The city of Blackpool is preparing for its by-election tomorrow. We've been gauging the mood there as rival parties aim to heap more pressure on the Conservatives, with time ticking for a general election.
A lot of cloud today with a few showers around, but some heavy, potentially thundery rain arrives overnight in the far south. I'll have the full details in the forecast coming up shortly.
So a busy hour ahead. As Eamonn was mentioning, we're going to be speaking to the Minister for Women and Equalities. That's Kemi Badenoch. She's going to be discussing the importance of women's-only spaces. That's just before 9. And we've also got Bridget Phillipson on for Labour. She's the Shadow Education Secretary.
Now, we want to do this with your views, things that you have to say. gbnews.com/your say. Please do that.
OK, we're going to focus on the horrific scenes yesterday in north-east London. A former detective chief and superintendent of the Metropolitan Police, Kevin Hurley, has come out calling for police officers to be armed.
All of them. It comes after another high-profile incident where a man was tasered, then arrested on suspicion of murder following the death of a 14-year-old lad.
Well, 5 people have been treated for injuries in hospital, with dramatic footage showing the moment that the perpetrator was successfully stopped by police. Assistant Commissioner Louisa Rolfe said police have found no trace of a prior incident involving the suspect, whilst the Prime Minister has said there is no place for violence like this on our streets.
Authorised, they are not selected, and they are not trained.
Can they choose not to carry a taser?
Yes, they can, but, however, I think the time has come now, if we set the firearms discussion aside for a moment, to focus on tasers. I firmly believe that every frontline police officer should have a taser. Yesterday's events have shown how effective they can be in murderous, dangerous, deadly circumstances. And quite frankly, if we expect our frontline police officers to carry a tourniquet so that they can deal with the effects of knife crime, then at the very least we should expect and allow and give them a taser.
What's your view on that one? Well, meanwhile, the Scottish Government faces a no-confidence vote after the First Minister said he is resigning. His resignation on Monday came just 13 months after he replaced Nicola Sturgeon and sparks another leadership contest in the SNP.
Yeah, the crisis in the party is giving an opportunity for the UK opposition Labour Party to regain ground ahead of the national election, which is expected later this year. The Scottish Tories and the Lib Dems have backed the motion, but without support from the Greens, it's likely to be defeated. Let's get the analysis this morning of our political correspondent, Olivia Uckley, who joins us from Westminster. Good morning to you. So what's going to happen north of the border today?
Well, essentially, this is just going to heap yet more embarrassment onto the SNP. There is going to be this vote of no confidence in the entire SNP government, tabled by Anna Sanwar of Scottish Labour. And as you said there, we are expecting the Lib Dems and the Conservatives to back it, as you might expect. But the Green Party have said that they will support the SNP government in this. As we know, they stepped away from that coalition. They, when they were forced away from that coalition, they turned on Humza Yousaf, and in the end he had to resign. Now that he has gone, they are saying that they will back the SNP as a government. So it's thought that the SNP will hold on, that there won't be a mass resignation of ministers. But if by some chance the Greens change their mind at the last minute, and let's not forget there's only 2 of them, so it could be they could all be pretty fickle, it could go down to the wire, and they end up voting against the SNP government, then all SNP ministers will have to resign, and within 28 days the SNP will have to try and form a new government. And if they fail to do that, then there would be an early election in Holyrood, which is exactly what Scottish Labour would like to see.
OK, and Olivia, explain to us the significance of this first failed asylum seeker taking a voluntary deal to head to Rwanda, distinct from the Rwanda deal that we've been talking about for so long. But the government will be trying to sell this to us as a win, will they not?
The government will definitely be trying to sell this as a win. This is the very first time that the government has sent a migrant, an illegal migrant, over to a third country. So although it is separate from the Rwanda scheme, which we have been talking about so much, the government will very much be presenting this as a win. This man has been handed, he hasn't been named, he has been handed £3,000 of taxpayer money in order to help him resettle in Rwanda, and he is of African origin originally. So I think there will be some eyebrows raised perhaps over whether this really is a win for the British taxpayer. We can expect Rishi Sunak to be talking about it a lot at PMQs today, but it's possible that Keir Starmer decides to lead with this. As an example, actually, of the government, you know, it has been 5 months since this emergency legislation was tabled, and so far 1 migrant has been removed, and that's a bit different, it's a bit separate, and it has to be given £3,000 of taxpayer money. So I think we can expect both leaders of each party to be using this as ammunition at PMQs today.
Olivia, thank you very much indeed, with the time at 7 minutes past 8 o'clock still to come.
The King has said he's feeling much better as he's returned to public duties for the first time since his cancer diagnosis.
Well, we'll be speaking to royal commentator Jenny Bond about that and lots more royal stories right after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News with Dubes & Co from 6, followed by Farage at 7. At 8, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg addresses the state of the nation. And at 9, join Patrick Christie's Tonight, followed by Headliners at 11. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Today is a good day for the King, a good day for Britain. I'm sure you'll be hoping that those Not My King morons decide to give it a rest for a little while, because he is still dealing with an illness, isn't he?
He's still dealing with an illness, and he appears to be dealing extremely well. I think he comes from the fact that he's extremely strong and fit. I think I understand that will help his treatment enormously. And I think, as your professor was saying, it's the fatigue that can be a brutal thing when you're trying to lead a normal life with cancer. But I think that it's going to really help him psychologically to get out there, and people are going to be giving him enormous support. I mean, I know, as you say, there's an anti-monarchy brigade, but there's been an anti-monarchy brigade since there's been a monarchy. So that is not such a big deal. It has always been there. I feel that Charles is going to get a lot of support from the sort of joyousness of people seeing him and, you know, wishing him well. And I think that that's going to be immensely important to him. It's a very busy time, but I think a boost for William and Kate. William's out and about. We don't know about Kate, but I feel that the King will definitely. It's a very busy time coming up with the anniversary of D-Day in Normandy, which I know he will be desperate to be a part of. Then there's the big royal season, the Trooping the Colour, the Garter ceremony, Royal Ascot, and then he is hosting the Emperor and Empress of Japan at the end of June. So it's a absolutely packed month for someone that is presumably going to get very tired.
Yes, indeed. I mean, if he gets through all of that, I think that will be absolutely massive, won't it?
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Big day today for the government's Legacy Act. A Legacy Act to end historical inquests and the transferring of Troubles-era cases to a new body.
Yeah, it's a controversial act. It has been opposed by victims' groups and all the main political parties in Northern Ireland.
Well, here to explain what it is all about, let's go to our Northern Ireland reporter, Dougie Beattie, for us on this one. Explain to people why this is so controversial, Dougie.
Well, this is about victims of the Troubles in Northern Ireland. And of course, 25 years ago, a quarter of a century ago, we ended the Troubles in Northern Ireland. The Good Friday Agreement came to pass. And of course, from that time, there has been endless cases coming through the courts here behind us. And they have had very little results because, as I keep on saying on this, and people say, why do you keep referring to it? And it is those letters of comfort and Queen's pardons and mercy that were given to paramilitaries after the Good Friday Agreement was signed that have really stopped any further investigations in their tracks. Because we had the Canova report that was looking at security force and paramilitary collusion and running of state agents just a couple of months ago. And it did say, well, there was an awful large amount of that sort of thing going on. And of course, they did not want to be named. So all these cases will get so far and then they stop. There is a block put on them, or the information is outside DNA, it's been contaminated, or any legal wranglings around this. And what happened was there's been about 2.5 billion spent over 25 years and many, many bodies set up and no results for any of the victims involved in this. Let's remember, many of these victims were innocents here. So the government has said, look, enough's enough. We've had 25 years of this, and we're going to set up the Independent Commission for Reconciliation and Information Recovery. And the people at the head of this are some quite well-known and very, very clever legal minds, some ex-police officers, very senior police officers, who are offering a way forward to victims to find out exactly what happened to their loved ones. Now, it will not end up in any court after that, but at least the loved ones will have some idea as to what happened to their relations during the Troubles and maybe actually find out who was involved. Now, the Irish government has had an intergovernmental case against the British government on this very issue. They have took that to Europe and said, we don't like it, we don't want it, we want to make sure that we have, we know all the information. But of course, the Irish government weren't cleaning this either, and there has been a lot of talk from the unionist side of the community wanting more inquiries from the south. But 25 years on, many of these relations are dead and gone, and many will never ever find out the truth. All political parties here are against this, and as is every single victims group. But it may be a way forward that will help people, and really the government are saying at this time, please give us a chance to actually prove ourselves here.
OK, Dougie, thank you very much for bringing us up to speed on that.
Thank you. Just looking at the books that have been voted the most loved children's stories of all time. Number one is The Hungry Caterpillar. Stop me if you've read any of these, or you've got your kids are into this. Gruffalo, number 2.
Yep.
The Tiger Who Came to Tea is number 3. Goldilocks and the Three Bears, number 4. Going on a Bear Hunt, number 5. Three Little Pigs, 6. The Tales of Peter Rabbit in at 7. At 8, A Bear Called Paddington. Winnie the Pooh at 9. And number 10 is Little Red Riding Hood.
Read all of them. Winnie the Pooh has to win, hands down, because it transcends children and adulthood, and it has so much good advice for kids in there. And it's
Which one has?
Humour. Winnie the Pooh. I mean, it's just incomparable to all the others. A lot of I mean, like Hungry Caterpillar, great for like a tiny, tiny, tiny baby, but you know, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, the stuff in Winnie the Pooh is, it's just.
There's a lot of loving words in Winnie the Pooh.
Loving words, and you know, all this idea of mindfulness that is quite a modern concept is all in there.
You see,
before it became on vogue.
I was surprised that Little Red Riding Hood and Goldilocks and the Three Little Pigs are all in there, because you know it's about a big wolf that may well eat Little Red Riding Hood or blowing a house down and all that sort of thing. But very, very nice that those books, the classics, still well and truly dominate and occupy all of that.
Let us know your favourites. In the meantime, here's your forecast with Aidan McGibbon.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. A lot of cloud today with some showers, but there'll be more heavy rain arriving into the south overnight, even some thunderstorms. Initially, the best of any sunshine will be across the western parts, and there'll be some decent sunny spells around during the morning. Northwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Wales keep those sunny spells well into the afternoon. Otherwise, increasing amounts of cloud arrive from the east with some showery rain, especially for eastern Scotland, parts of central and eastern England. But away from the showery rain, actually it's going to be relatively warm, particularly where we get some sunshine through central parts, Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, temperatures up into the high teens, perhaps even 20, 21 Celsius. Nevertheless, looking towards the south into the evening, we've got this area of heavy rain moving up, perhaps even some thunderstorms across some southern counties of England into South Wales during the early hours of tomorrow. And those thunderstorms could be accompanied by frequent lightning, some very heavy rainfall. Be a noisy night in places, but they'll be hit and miss, and they will be clearing away across South Wales and the southwest of England during the morning tomorrow, leaving a legacy of low cloud and outbreaks of drizzly rain. Elsewhere, brighter skies develop after a mostly dry night. Plenty of sunshine for Scotland, Northern Ireland into much of central and eastern England, but some parts of northeast England and eastern Scotland will be affected by low cloud. That will make things feel much cooler.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now then, we have a £20,000 Great British giveaway up for grabs. How do they do it?
Well, they sort of do it like this, and I hope you'll end up very happy.
We've blown the budget by giving you the chance to win a totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For a chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck. We're going to be talking royal stories with Jenny Bond, the royal commentator, right after this.
The latest GB News travel. Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Tyrone, the A5 is closed southeast of Omer after an accident. In Flintshire, the A541 is closed at Mould after a fire. On the M1 in Leicestershire, the inside lane's closed northbound when someone's broken down between junctions 24 and 25 from Kegworth to the A52, causing delays. On the M25 in Hertfordshire, the inside lane's closed anti-clockwise where a lorry's broken down a mile after junction 25 for the A10, with queues from junction 26 at Waltham Abbey. There's also a lane closed on the M25 in Essex where someone's broken down on the anti-clockwise exit at junction 29 for the A127. On the M25 in Kent, the inside lane's closed each way again today near junction 5 for the M26. Repairs causing queues, 5 miles of queues on the M26 approaching the M25. And on the M271 in Hampshire, there are 2 lanes closed heading north out of Southampton between junction 1 and the M27 after an accident causing queues. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Dubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News with Dubes & Co from 6, followed by Farage at 7. At 8, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg addresses the state of the nation. And at 9, join Patrick Christie's Tonight, followed by Headliners at 11. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The King was out and about yesterday and he said he's feeling much better as he returned to public duties for the first time since he himself was diagnosed with cancer.
Yes, he went on a visit with his wife, the Queen, to a Macmillan Cancer Centre in London, and he held hands with cancer patients whilst he was there.
So let's speak to royal commentator Jenny Bond with her thoughts on all of this. I thought he looked quite strong, all things considered, Jenny.
I thought so too. A little paler, perhaps, than usual, because he has quite a ruddy complexion. But all in all, looking very well. And I think Isabel is right to point out the hand. It wasn't just a handshake; it was a hand clasp. It was real, genuine, holding people's hands, empathising with them. You could see that in all his body language and his face. And I think this is probably, I think it's probably quite cathartic for him. And obviously for the patients he met there, but to meet people who are going through this trauma, this mental trauma as well as physical trauma, and truly empathise with them, I think must have been uplifting all round.
We saw the footage of him with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak soon after we all learnt of his diagnosis, when he said that he was overcome with emotion reading the letters that he'd been receiving from members of the public. And you got that sense yesterday, didn't you, that he really feels this deeply, not only because of his own diagnosis, but of course, as we know, because of his daughter-in-law's as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I think he was incredibly keen to thank people as personally as he could. He lingered on the steps as they went in longer than usual, and there was a much bigger press party than normally would be at an occasion like that. He knew this was a significant, important occasion. And I think that getting back to work is the best thing he can do and the best message, really, he can send out to fellow sufferers. Because there was a senior oncologist I was listening to just last week saying that just to sit around and mull over it and feel sorry for yourself. And the king is someone who can be prone to a little touch of self-pity and melancholy, but to avoid that and to get back to normal, get back to work, to focus on that is actually the best thing you can do for your health.
Yeah, he's got back to work with his wife, the Queen, by his side. I think it's interesting to see them both together. I mean, they don't have to do various functions as a duet, but I think it gives a very strong image.
It does, and I think what a relief, actually, for Camilla. She's been flying solo for the last 4 months and heading up the royal family, keeping the show on the road. And I think everybody, well, I know not everybody in the country, but most people would concede that she's done it pretty magnificently. And actually she's appeared to thrive on it. She's looking amazing and very energised. But behind the scenes, she must have been and is so concerned about her husband. And so to be out together as a dual act, I think would have been a great relief for her. And I mean, for him, she just is absolutely his rock and keeps him grounded and keeps him cheerful.
Yeah. Where are we at with his health, though? It's not the end of the road for his treatment, not necessarily out of the woods yet. He's still being monitored by doctors, isn't he?
Well, I mean, more than monitors, he's being treated. In fact, he was having a treatment just yesterday afternoon. He confided in one of the patients that he was having his treatment. We don't know what treatment that is, but he did discuss the cold cap, which is used during chemotherapy with another patient. So maybe that's what he's having, but certainly the treatment is ongoing. But he was wearing his favourite tie, his C-Rex tie. It's got little dinosaurs on it, and he wears that when he's feeling pretty cheerful.
Really? What do you get insights from his tie, from his mood, into his mood from his tie? So what else is in his wardrobe, and what do they tell us? I'm fascinated, because obviously the same applies to Eamonn.
Well, I haven't actually been in his wardrobe, but lots of very beautiful silk ties. And he does take special pride in wearing particular ties, obviously, ceremonial occasions, the appropriate tie. But this is a rather amusing one. It's got little dinosaurs on, little T-Rexes, so it's a play on C-Rex. And I think we can deduce from that he was feeling a little bit playful, certainly upbeat.
Jenny, thank you very much indeed. Thanks for the insights.
I bet that was from one of the grandchildren. It's bound to be, isn't it? That's one of the grandchildren who gave him that.
Right, the time is 27 minutes past the hour. Still to come, we have got the Shadow Secretary of State for Education, Bridget Phillipson, right after this.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
Organisations, plural, because there's loads of people doing this, that organisations are charging schools to be part of this odd league table about who's trying to outdo who when it comes to who is more trans inclusive with the kids than the next person. There's something that makes me uneasy about this.
Supposing a child comes home and says, you think, oh, I've done well today. He said, well, how have you done? He said, well, what were you? I was #1 painter, or I was #1 reader. No, I wasn't. I was made LGBT champion. This is a 4- and 5-year-old. Look, I can understand this, actually, as we develop into the secondary school. I can understand more debates taking place. I cannot understand why we have to thrust it at young children. And I think if you ask the parents, they'd be hostile to it. And what about the role the teacher has to play in all this?
Society has been one way, the pendulum is swinging the other way, and they're pushing it very far in order to kind of proliferate change. And this is probably the toughest period in that evolutionary process, because the LGBTQ plus community is saying that you've got to really rage against the machine to get people to listen. Because put it like this now, even this conversation, the whole country is listening, the whole world is listening. These are the kinds of, going to be friction. There's going to be a locking of heads in the process to getting to a point where you establish a new equilibrium where they feel more incorporated. Like I've said, the greatest force of allies that the LGBTQ plus community has always had is heterosexual women. What you're moving towards now is doing things that is beginning to turn them from allies into people who feel that, oh, for you to thrive, I'm being deprived, and that's a problem. When they realise you're alienating allies, they will understand you've got to recalibrate to have that kind of understanding between both parties.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We've got Bridget Phillipson now. Bridget is the Shadow Secretary of State for Education. Bridget, good morning to you. I'm looking at a story in the Mirror today which has got Jonathan Ashworth, in a bingo hall. And basically, he's saying, and it was a message he was trying to get across on our programme yesterday, Bridget, that the Conservatives are gambling with your pensions. What's your worry?
I'm really concerned that in the last budget they opened up a £46 billion black hole when they set out what they are talking about as their long-term plan to abolish national insurance contributions. Now, we all know that national insurance contributions are an important part of how people's state pension is calculated, and I think pensioners have every right, and pensioners into the future should be really concerned about what the Conservatives have got in store. This is an unfunded commitment. They've had more than 50 days now since they announced this to set out their plan for how they're going to pay for it, and they have failed to do so. And I think it's just reckless and cavalier, and is the very worst of what we saw under Liz Truss when she was Prime Minister.
I'm curious about how the Labour Party intends to honour the triple lock on pensions. This is something we tried to talk about with Jonathan as well yesterday. There's lots of concerns, including from Conservatives who originally, introduced this legislation, that this is no longer going to be sustainable. And even the Institute for Fiscal Studies have said, if you do continue with the triple lock, you're just going to have to end up eventually increasing the age at which people are able to retire, because it's just not affordable at the levels that we're talking about today. So how will you address this issue? Will you just increase pensioners' age?
I think it's really important that pensioners have got dignity and a good standard of living when they're in retirement. And that was the record of the last Labour government in terms of lifting pensioners out of poverty and making sure that they had not just enough to get by, but actually to enjoy a much better quality of living.
How are you going to sustain the triple lock?
We are clear that we would... Absolutely, we are clear that we will maintain the triple lock. I mean, that is important for workers who are coming through and who will, have a good pension into retirement, as well as for today's pensioners too. It's within the government's baseline, so they have already accounted for this within their plans. We intend to maintain it. We think it's important that pensioners have got that security, that dignity and that knowledge that they don't have to worry about the future, because, of course, pensioners don't have the ability to take on more hours, and we know that pensioners are often people who are particularly exposed to issues like cost of living pressures around gas and electricity bills. I've spoken to lots of people over the years as a Member of Parliament in my community where, because pensioners might have ill health or will be spending more time at home, they're often spending more of their income on things like gas and electricity, and that's why it's so important that they have that certainty, that security of knowing that the pension will be maintained at a good level.
Yeah, and you want national insurance maintained as well. And I'm just interested, Bridget, does national insurance, is it actually ring-fenced for things like pension? You know, the way people pay road tax and they think it goes to the roads and it doesn't. But is the situation any different with national insurance?
I mean, that's not quite how it works, but what national insurance does count towards is the years and the contributions that you make count towards the pension that you will then receive in retirement. So what the government have set out in these reckless and crazy plans to just abolish national insurance, they've answered no questions as to what that would mean in terms of people's contributions, what that means for the state pension, or frankly how they're going to fund it. This is £46 billion that we're talking about. Are they going to ask for pensioners to pay more in taxation, for example? We just don't know, because they won't answer these questions. And there is absolutely no way that I would be allowed to come on your programme this morning setting out such a big plan unless I was clear about how we were going to pay for it and how we were going to fund it. And that's the difference between us and the Conservatives. We're clear that fiscal responsibility, being serious about taxpayers' money, is right at the heart of everything that we'll do. And we saw what the Conservatives did under Liz Truss, you know, £45 billion bombshell there, and now we've got £46 billion in terms of national insurance abolition. It's absolutely crazy.
I want to talk to you about single-sex spaces. There's been lots of discussion about it over the last 24 hours with the NHS constitution being updated yesterday. We've got Kemi Badenoch, the Women's and Equalities Minister, on in a few minutes, and she's talking about this as well. Where does Labour sit in all of this? Because, of course, Rosie Duffield, your female colleague in the Commons for the Labour Party, was criticised by your boss for saying that only women had a cervix.
I believe that single-sex spaces are important. I believe they're incredibly important in the context of the care that women will receive in hospital, when you can be very vulnerable and you want to make sure that people have got safety and privacy and dignity. The sad reality is that under the Conservatives, actually, we've seen a big explosion in the number of mixed-sex provision
but
within
I'm asking
NHS
you about
hospitals.
Sir Keir Starmer's views. Do you
that.
condemn him for what he said to Rosie Duffield about, you know, he believed that she was wrong when she said only women had a cervix?
You know, I'm clear about what biological sex is. I'm a woman. I'm speaking to you this morning. I'm clear what being a woman
was wrong
means
to say
and what that's about. But alongside that, I think we need to make sure that when we're using language and seeking to treat one another with respect. And sadly, you know, much of the discussion will often drift into a rather difficult and toxic place, when I think what all of us want to do is make sure that we do respect and maintain single-sex spaces. I think that's really important. But I also think we need to show some compassion and understanding and respect of people, trans people, and make sure they've got the support that they need to. I don't think it is one or the other. I think we can maintain single-sex spaces, for example, in hospitals, and alongside that, making sure that all patients have the right level of support that they need. The reality is, under the Conservatives, that isn't happening. So what I'd say to Kemi Badenoch is, it's all very good and well talking about the importance of single-sex wards within the NHS, but it's her government that has been responsible for a big growth in the number of mixed-sex wards that mean that women often don't have that privacy that they would like and expect when they're in a hospital.
Bridget Phillipson, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Bridget Phillipson is the Shadow Secretary of State for Education. Thank you very much indeed. Just a bit concerned at all those police sirens out there. What was
it's
going
the backdrop
on?
to London these days, isn't it? We're going to go through what's making the news this morning in the company of the Deputy Editor at Spiked, Fraser Myers, and former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire. Scarlett, I'm going to start with you because I know that you are close with Bridget Phillipson. She didn't want to answer my question, did she, about Sir Keir Starmer and Rosie Duffield, and very keen to talk about the Conservatives and all this. I think it was outrageous that he condemned what she said in 2021.
No, I mean, I think condemning is putting it much too strongly. I mean, I think the thing about Rosie is that she's very polarising. And
do you think she was treated well by Sir Keir Starmer?
Yeah, I actually. I mean, I think she's a very polarising person, and quite a lot of things are about Rosie Duffield rather than actually about what's going on. And I mean, it's very interesting that there's no question that among many women and men, but particularly women, they are split. There's a whole spectrum about what they feel about trans women and where they should be, and a lot of people who agree with Rosie's analysis actually think that she made an amazing amount of fuss about very little.
Really?
I don't think that's right. I mean, you know, Rosie Duffield has been hounded by Labour activists. Keir Starmer has never spoken up in her defence. Yesterday, he made this extraordinary claim that, you know, the door is open to her. She said that that's just nonsense. He's not telling the truth. And to be clear, you know, Keir Starmer said it was wrong to say that women only have cervixes. That is it's a statement of fact. There's not even a debate about this. Labour is so lost on this trans issue, and it's interesting. You know, we had the Cass review recently into the gender identity services for children. Wes Streeting, surprisingly, welcomely, has welcomed the findings. He said, you know, the Labour government will implement them. But at the same time, Labour is also proposing a ban on what it calls trans conversion therapy. Now, that means that if parents who follow the recommendations of the Cass review and don't automatically affirm their child's gender identity, they could find themselves in trouble with the law. That is ultimately what is being proposed by Labour.
The thing about conversion therapy, let's get it straight, and it began with gay conversion therapy, is it's not about having a conversation. It's about saying, no, this is impossible, you know, we've got to convert you back. I mean, what the Cass report said is, actually, what's very important about her is she said that there is a toxic atmosphere, and actually children who feel that they're in the wrong gender should be treated and given therapy. Well, yes, I mean, how many years do you have to wait for therapy, right? So what she didn't say is it doesn't exist. What she said is that...
She said they're being treated like guinea pigs and you need to give them the space.
She said they were being treated like guinea pigs by being given drugs. I am not ever saying given drugs. I mean, I think those sort of drugs should never be given to young people.
You're talking about Starmer. That was, what, 3 years ago we said that?
21, yeah.
I think the thing is, though, Scarlett and Fraser, that the terminology and the education and all of this maybe has moved on a bit. You wonder if you asked him the same question now, would he have the same
I'd love
answer?
to ask him that. We'd love to have him on breakfast.
But
Would you have a word for us, Scarlett? We can't seem to persuade him. It's about time, too, because they're trying to claim there's lots of GB News viewers who are going to vote Labour. So put your money where your mouth is, Mr Starmer, and come and talk to us on the programme.
Well, I would recommend that he came and talked to you two rather than anybody else.
Well, we'll take that. Thank you very much. Can't guarantee that it'll be an easy ride, though.
Well,
no, not because you're an easy ride, but because you're not going to ask him completely ridiculous questions.
Well, look, we're going to ask these two completely ridiculous questions right after the break. Please do stay with us. More Paper Talk right after this.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. A lot of cloud today with some showers, but there'll be more heavy rain arriving into the south overnight, even some thunderstorms. Initially, the best of any sunshine will be across the western parts, and there'll be some decent sunny spells around during the morning. Northwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Wales keep those sunny spells well into the afternoon. Otherwise, increasing amounts of cloud arrive from the east with some showery rain, especially for eastern Scotland, parts of central and eastern England. But away from the showery rain, actually it's going to be relatively warm, particularly where we get some sunshine through central parts, Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, temperatures up into the high teens, perhaps even 20, 21 Celsius. Nevertheless, looking towards the south into the evening, we've got this area of heavy rain moving up, perhaps even some thunderstorms across some southern counties of England into South Wales during the early hours of tomorrow. And those thunderstorms could be accompanied by frequent lightning, some very heavy rainfall. Be a noisy night in places, but they'll be hit and miss, and they will be clearing away across South Wales and the southwest of England during the morning tomorrow, leaving a legacy of low cloud and outbreaks of drizzly rain. Elsewhere, brighter skies develop after a mostly dry night. Plenty of sunshine for Scotland, Northern Ireland into much of central and eastern England, but some parts of northeast England and eastern Scotland will be affected by low cloud. That'll make things feel much cooler.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Tyrone, the A5 is closed southeast of Omer after an accident. In Flintshire, the A541 is closed at Mould after a fire. On the M1 in Leicestershire, the inside lane's closed northbound. Someone's broken down between junctions 24 and 25 from Kegworth to the A52, causing delays. On the M25 in Hertfordshire, there's a lane closed anti-clockwise, and a mile after junction 25 for the A10, where a lorry's broken down. Queues are back beyond junction 26 at Waltham Abbey. On the M25 in Kent, there's a lane closed each way again today for repairs near junction 5 for the M26, causing delays, with 5 miles of queues on the M26 towards there. On the M271 in Hampshire, there are 2 lanes closed northbound between junction 1 and the M27 after an accident, causing queues heading out of Southampton. The Itchin Bridge in Southampton's closed westbound because of a breakdown, causing queues. And in Dorset, Ashley Road in Boscombe is closed because of an accident, causing queues. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
You're the winner of the Great British Giveaway.
I'm slipping neck. Oh dear.
Oh my God, are you joking?
You're joking. Really? Seriously, it's not a wine. What is it?
Oh my God, this is amazing. Thank you.
The next winning call could be answered by you. For a chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from tomorrow,
the people decide.
As the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections, we'll take you through the night as the first results come in.
And we'll pick up at breakfast
with the very best guests and analysis.
And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from tomorrow at midnight on GB News.
We've got Fraser Myers and we've got Scarlett Maguire, and they have got the newspapers in front of them. And the King came out in force yesterday, Fraser, and visiting a cancer treatment centre. And we hear that the UK is leading a prostate cancer revolution. Tell us more.
Yes, so this is potentially very good news. One of the real problems with prostate cancer, a disease that kills around 12,000 people in the UK every year, is that the testing and the screening is just not very good. So that means at the moment there is, we're not able to just do national screening because it's not reliable enough. So there's going to be these huge trials to test out this new method of screening. Just over 12,000 people are being invited for the first round, but it's going to encompass 300,000 people. And then hopefully we will determine whether this is a good way of screening people. As with all cancers, catch it early, you can stop it. The UK has a very poor record on cancer. It got even worse during COVID and lockdown, but hopefully this is some good news to turn things around, especially on the prostate cancer front.
Do we know what the scan would involve? You don't need specifics, but at the moment, I believe testing for prostate can be fairly unpleasant for gentlemen.
That's a good word. That's a good description. Have you ever had a test for it yet, Fraser?
No, I haven't.
You're too young.
Because I do think...
Not looking forward to it.
I think if there's any way of making it less unpleasant, that might also come...
Well, you see, it's unpleasant because men's bottoms and women's bottoms are different. I didn't know this until I was 60 years of age.
I regret bringing this up now.
But I didn't realise that your bottom is different than my bottom. And
it hadn't occurred to me.
And that I have things in my bottom that you don't have.
Right. Right.
Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
No, I don't need to know that.
I'm not sure. I mean, actually, the thing about prostate cancer, I mean, it is terrible. People should not be dying of it.
Yeah.
Alistair Darling, the former Chancellor, died of prostate cancer.
Did not, did he?
Yeah. I mean, you should be able to get Bill Turnbull, who I'm sure you know, like I did, you know, because it was caught too late. I mean, prostate cancer is something that can be caught early and either cured or treated, so that many men die with prostate cancer, not of it. And so I think this is really, really important. And however unpleasant it is, I can tell you, testing for cervical cancer isn't great either.
No.
Honestly, you should see, you wouldn't be a man. You wouldn't want the things we have to go through.
Unlike childbirth.
Honestly, the things, Scarlett, the things we have to suffer as men. All ahead of you, Fraser.
Oh, get the violins out. Let's talk about Donald Trump. He is winding up this judge, isn't he? And it doesn't even feel like he's properly got involved in this trial yet, so who knows where this could go.
Well, there are two things about it. I mean, first of all, he has been told not to insult the jurors or anybody else.
Can't help himself.
And he does go on, and he's being fined £1,000 a time, with the judge saying that actually ultimately he could go to jail. It is criminal contempt of court. I mean, can you imagine if we did it here? If anybody did it here, it would be terrible. But the other thing that is so shocking is that sort of taken over from what actually happened during Trump's run for the president is that the editor of the National Enquirer, which is, you know, a sort of scandal sheet, a Trump supporter, so he bought up stories that were anti-Trump and then killed them. So there was this woman who was a playgirl who had an affair with Trump.
Playboy bunny, yeah,
a Playboy bunny who had an affair with Trump. Allegedly, but she was paid $150,000
for
allegedly having the affair, and the story was killed. And that's what this guy, this editor, felt his job was to protect.
The thing that amazes me, Fraser, is what high-profile politician or person in public life could survive the scandals that Trump has been through with their reputation intact. It just seems to be the man is immune. He's completely waterproof.
Well, I think the thing is with these criminal trials, some of them at least, I think some are more serious than others. This trial in particular, people have the sense that it's political. So that's why he's kind of able to survive it. Actually, his poll rating has gone up since every new indictment has been filed against him. And certainly, I think he has actually a point when it comes to this particular trial. There are many questionable aspects of it. I mean, you have to remember, in America, you know, the judiciary is a lot more politicised. Sorry, not the judiciary, but the prosecutor is a Democrat. You know, they have to be elected. He said he was going to get Trump as one of his campaign promises. The story is normally a misdemeanor. It's not a crime, you know, not a felony crime to fiddle your expenses. Essentially, he's being accused of saying, he's being told that he should have filed paying off Stormy Daniels as an election expense, which is just ridiculous. So there's many, you know, quite sensible non-pro-Trump legal people are saying that this case is a stretch, and that's why he's able to, you know, get people on his side and say that he's being attacked. And then that means that, you know, the more serious cases do get overlooked, unfortunately, because I think there are many things that, you know, Trump has behaved disgracefully, particularly around the 2020 election. You know, possible criminal interference with the attempts to overturn some of the results. Those things are very, very serious indeed and need to be taken seriously.
But
this particular case
heard after the election.
Yes.
So he could. I mean, arguably, he might not even have to face that.
Potentially not, but I think, you know, what's interesting is that this case is happening now because of the election. This alleged crime or non-crime happened 7 years ago. The statute of limitations would ordinarily have run out. So, you know, on the one hand, Trump must not be above the law. No one should be, but nor should he be beneath the law. You know, he is being treated in this particular instance. He's being criminalised for being Trump, unfortunately.
But Fraser, I mean, he's also saying things like that if he loses, there will be violence. I mean,
which is disgraceful.
It is really, really scary what is going on in America. And he's just going on, you know, on Trump's social, going on saying things as though, you know, that the violence in 2020, where a policeman was killed, right, will be as nothing as if he loses again. I mean, it is absolutely disgraceful.
Something a little bit less controversial, George Galloway. We had him on the programme yesterday, up to his usual tricks of sort of talking in riddles and nonsense, trying to ask him a straight question, never straightforward. But he did announce that Monty Panesar is going to be standing for his Workers' Party of Britain in the seat for Ealing and Southall. And there is certainly, Fraser, a big appeal to people who share his views on Gaza and Palestine.
Well, what's interesting, I mean, George Galloway obviously won the Rochdale by-election on the back of, sort of anger over Gaza. But Monty Panesar says he doesn't know anything about Gaza, doesn't know anything about NATO. He said he'll leave the foreign policy stuff to George.
George says there's none of that in his manifesto.
Exactly, and Monty Panesar says he wants to be PM, so he should probably wise up on foreign policy if he wants to do that. But I'm fascinated by his platform, actually, because, Workers' Party is a left-wing party to the left of Labour. And some of the things that Monty has emphasised is he wants a referendum on net zero, he wants to scrap ULEZ, they're against illegal migration, and actually, I think
you think that should be in reform.
No. I think those are things that appeal to working class voters, and I think it says something about the way the left has gone in the past, 30, 40, 50 years, that those things are considered far right. Those would be entirely normal social democratic positions not very long ago. Net zero clearly is going to lead to deindustrialisation. It is strange that it has been embraced by left-wing parties who purport to speak for the working class.
That's because we're worried about climate change. Actually, that's because we think that coming down the road is a total and utter disaster that we need to do something about. It's not about being left-wing or right-wing. It's about believing
jobs.
the scientists.
Fraser, you're talking about, the deindustrialisation of places. And, there's no doubt about it that this seems to be bad news for jobs. Labour will say, we'll create a whole new environment, planning ahead for net zero, but,
I think if you essentially, fundamentally, if you increase the price of energy, if you make it more difficult to, create and manufacture things, if you impose all kinds of rules on what can be made and can't be made here, then industry is going to suffer, and there will be some other industries, there will be some green industries and renewables and things like that. But I think the net effect is going to be bad for British industry, and I think that. We need to wise up to that. That doesn't mean you don't take climate change seriously. It just means maybe the strategy needs to be rethought.
But maybe what you do is you take climate change seriously and you become a world leader in renewables. That's what we could have done, right? We could be making wind farms. We could have a tidal near Swansea. We could be looking at all those things, and actually we could be using that to make more jobs, rather than saying, oh no, it's all terrible.
Why has Keir Starmer U-turned then on that plan?
He hasn't U-turned. He's U-turned on the money,
right? For the first year. Yeah.
What he's said is it won't be 28 billion because because interest rates are so high. But there's no question is that they're absolutely committed. What we need is a green revolution so that we do have green jobs, so that it's exciting. It's not about deindustrialising. It's about doing new things.
OK, well, let us know your views at home on this. I'm pretty sure I know where the GB News listeners and viewers will sit on this, but it's gbnews.com/your say. A reminder, we have Kemi Badenoch shortly appearing on the channel. She wants to appeal for examples of where single-sex spaces have not been honoured. And I just wanted to put it out to both of you, really, where you think she's going with this. She is the Minister for Equality and Women. Is she sort of jumping on the bandwagon with this, or is she, onto something?
I think she's actually been quite consistent on this issue. issue, to be fair to her, and has, I'm surprised that I think it was the head of the NHS Confederation said we don't want to turn this into a culture war. Well, I think the people who insisted that we could have self-ID in hospitals are the ones who started this culture war, not the women who are fighting back.
Yeah. I think the biggest problem for women who, like me, would like all women wards are not trans people, it's men. I mean, we've had men in women's wards forever. I mean, that's what we've got to deal with. I think it is a culture war, and I think, what she's going for is the leadership of the Conservative Party, and it's about headlines. But actually, it'd be really nice if the Conservatives took seriously all women wards so that we started having them.
Yeah, but isn't she saying in code that transgender people aren't women?
Yeah. I mean, what she's saying is you can't change your gender. Well, I mean, what I really mind is she's taking a tiny minority of society who are very, very vulnerable and using them as clickbait. And that's what happens. Instead of actually looking at the really serious problem, which is men in women's wards, because we haven't got it.
If you have self-ID, then you are opening it to all men. It's not just people who might be legitimately transgender. If you say anyone can identify into this, then by definition you're allowing men.
Well, I can tell you there are a lot of men who identify as men who are put in women's wards, right? It's not about self-ID, it's not about transgender.
As we say goodbye to you now, and if you were to go to the loo here, how do you feel about that? Because they are...
I hate it.
Yeah.
I really
so they're
hate
mixed. They're
mixed sex loos, and I find it incredible that GB News has one. And I come out and I never, there is a man. I mean, I'm very old-fashioned about it. I like women's loos for women.
Yeah, I agree. Men's loos for men. I like all that.
Scarlett McGuire, Fraser Myers, it's been a pleasure. Come back
you.
soon. Thank you both very much indeed. And we will have Kemi Badenoch with us very shortly. Morning. It's just after 9 o'clock. It is Wednesday, the 1st of May. You are very welcome to Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Live pictures we have for you this morning. This is the scene in northeast London today, 24 hours after yesterday's multiple stabbings and a murder. But the man who has been detained in custody has yet to be interviewed, given his injuries.
It is crunch day for the Scottish Government. They face a vote of no confidence put forward by Labour. If lost, all ministers would be forced to step down.
King Charles tells cancer patients on his return to public duty that his diagnosis came as a bad shock, as the government launches the biggest prostate cancer trial of its kind to test the effectiveness of treating the disease.
The first failed asylum seeker has been sent to Rwanda and given a fee to do so, funded by you all, the taxpayer. They've been rejected by the asylum system, but they did not arrive in the country on a small boat.
A lot of cloud today with a few showers around, but some heavy, potentially thundery rain arrives overnight in the far south. I'll have the full details in the forecast coming up shortly.
The female officer who stopped a man wielding a sword and fired her taser directly at his chest is... I don't know what that was.
She came close to losing her hand. This is according to new reports this morning from the Met chief, Mark Rowley. This is a developing line in all of this. She's widely been considered the hero of the hour.
Well, he hasn't been questioned yet. A 14-year-old boy, though, has been murdered. 5 people were also treated for their injuries. They had to go to hospital. And here you see the footage showing the moment that the assailant was stopped by police. Former Met Detective Peter Blexley had this to say.
Authorised, they are not selected and they are not trained.
Can they choose not to carry a taser?
Yes, they can, but, however, I think the time has come now, if we set the firearms discussion aside for a moment, to focus on tasers. I firmly believe that every frontline police officer should have a taser. Yesterday's events have shown how effective they can be in murderous, dangerous, deadly circumstances. And quite frankly, if we expect our frontline police officers to carry a tourniquet so that they can deal with the effects of knife crime, then at the very least we should expect and allow and give them a taser.
Get political reaction to this, Olivia Utley, for us in Westminster. Let's deal with this one first of all before we talk about Scotland, Olivia.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be an argument in the Metropolitan Police and something that Sadiq Khan is going to have to be thinking about. Obviously, we've got the London mayoral elections on Thursday, and one thing which has been levelled at Khan over and over again is that knife crime in London has got worse since he came to power. That is something that his rival, Susan Hall of the Conservatives, has been using as ammunition in this campaign. And I think that it is going to come under stark relief, whatever happens in that London mayoral election on Thursday. What pundits are predicting is that perhaps there could be a pretty low turnout. Sadiq might win, but it might be such a low turnout that it undermines his authority in London. So these are the sort of questions which I think will be asked of him a lot in the coming weeks and months.
Olivia, we'll perhaps check in with you a little bit later to talk about some of the other big stories, including Scotland, but we interrupt you and cross to Kemi Badenoch this morning, the Minister for Women and Equalities. Very warm welcome to you. You are calling today on members of the public to send in what you're calling real-world examples of public bodies and those that advise the public about cases that are confusing when it comes to single-sex spaces. Tell us more.
Yes. So yesterday you would have heard the Health Secretary talk about how she was enshrining single-sex spaces into the NHS Constitution because they'd had a lot of issues, people using words that were inappropriate, mixed-sex wards which were also inappropriate for patients. But I've also had many people write to me with examples of public institutions that are not following equality law. They issue guidance that's been written likely by Stonewall, and they issue policy that is not in keeping with the law. So what I said is, well, let's have a look at how big this problem is. To what extent is this an issue? If you have examples of where a public institution, so something that the government can do something about, is not following the law, please send us an example and we'll have a look at it, and if so, try and intervene where possible.
Even if they are following the law, a lot of it's just uncomfortable for a lot of people. I'm sure you will agree. Have you found any instances in your own life which have embarrassed you or made you feel uncomfortable?
Not recently. Certainly when I was much younger, just aggressive men using the women's loos for reasons just to intimidate. And I think that was not really something about single-sex spaces because it was very clear that was a single-sex space. So, but there will always be people who behave like that, who choose to exploit areas of vulnerability.
But
However,
the thing is, Kemi,
we shouldn't make the problem worse by creating confusion in terms of what people are or are not allowed to do.
But the thing is, it has been created now. That's now official. Men can use women's loos, or they're not called women's. What are they called now?
Gender neutral.
Gender neutral loos, of which we have one here, and I must say, none of us feel particularly comfortable with it. But it's quite the norm in many places.
So this is something that many people don't understand when it can be the norm. You know, in some private places you can do that if you want to. But certainly if you look at, this is not just about loos, by the way. This is about women's refuges. It's about a whole swathe of things. You know, mixed sex wards are not about loos. That's a way of sort of diminishing the issue. And many people don't understand the difference between a gender-neutral loo and a unisex one. So they think they're the same thing. But a unisex loo is like a disabled toilet. There's privacy, you have your own washroom. Anybody of any sex can use it.
Yeah.
A gender-neutral loo is one where you've got urinals and stalls, and men and women are, you know, doing intimate things in the same space. Quite often, it's actually men who complain that they don't like gender-neutral loos. They don't like having, to expose themselves when women are in the vicinity. We've issued guidance for schools, But if people aren't following the guidance, I would want to know. One of the things that was very interesting when we issued the guidance was lots of schools, some unions, and even some Labour MPs saying, oh, you don't have to follow this guidance. So if people aren't following guidance, let us know so that we can take a look at it.
The NHS isn't following guidance. In 2012, the NHS constitution banned mixed-sex wards. It's under a Conservative government. Yet it was breached 43,700 times last year, more than double the number reported in 2020. Wes Streeting is suspicious that actually what you're doing is banging a drum, a little bit of culture wars, there's elections round the corner, local elections tomorrow. If you were serious about this, you'd have done something about this in the last decade.
So this is why the Health Secretary enshrined it. People change the rules. And this is where I talk about the influence of Stonewall over the last 6-7 years. Rules and guidance was changed because you had people giving bad advice. So what happened in 2012 changed since then. We've been in government throughout this time and we are fixing it where people have been trying to undermine it. But it's very interesting that you say that Wes Streeting says that. Of course he's going to say that because Labour have been absolutely terrible on this issue. We're trying to fix a problem. They want it to go away and maybe even bring it back if they ever get their hands on power. I hope that doesn't happen. But I'm doing my job. He doesn't like it because this is an area where the public know that the Conservatives are right on this issue.
You're no stranger to Rwanda and all the issues involved in it. What do you make of this guy on the plane yesterday or whatever? He paid 3,000 quid, he gets a ticket and he gets a job in Rwanda. He is a migrant. We believe he's not a boat migrant, but he got into the country illegally. He's refused to stay here. Is this the future? Paying them $3,000 to head off to Rwanda, $3,000 each?
Well, I think we should remember that we're spending £8 million a day on this issue. That is not something that is sustainable. We have to deal with it. People said the Rwanda scheme wouldn't work. They tried to say that it wasn't a safe country. If it wasn't a safe country, we wouldn't have people volunteering to go. This shows that the scheme is working. People go to Rwanda on holiday. I know someone who's gone there on a gap year. We need to actually make sure that this scheme works. And that's what the Prime Minister is focusing on, getting people on those flights and getting them over there. Of course, it costs money, but there is no way to police our borders for free. If you have a way that we can do this without spending any money, I would love to hear it. This, I think, is one of the cheapest and most effective ways, and it's not the only thing we are doing. But the Home Secretary will tell you about all the things they're doing on border policing. This is just one of them. We have a plan. No one else has a plan. They just want to pretend that there is no problem. We do not pretend that there is no problem, and we're doing everything we can to sort it out.
You'll be aware local council elections and a by-election taking place tomorrow. You'll be braced, I'm sure, as many councillors are up and down the country, for a bit of a beating, to put it mildly. Do you think we could see a sort of Humza Yousaf turn of events for your boss, Rishi Sunak, in the next week? Certainly things have been looking fragile for a little while. Reports again in the weekend papers about a big Tory rebellion, plots to overthrow him. Will it ever end? And is he more fragile and uncertain than ever?
First of all, please, can we never compare Humza Yousaf to Rishi Sunak? Rishi Sunak is an extremely clever, capable, hard-working person. Humza Yousaf didn't know, basic things. Just this week or a few days ago, I had to explain to him the difference between the Post Office and Royal Mail. The SNP have run the government of Scotland into the ground.
OK, but my question was about whether or not Rishi Sunak might be facing a vote of no confidence, which is a realistic possibility.
I don't think that that's going... I don't think that is an issue. I think that people like to talk about it because it's Westminster gossip. This is not an issue. There will, of course, always, under every Prime Minister, be people who complain. But he is out there, he's campaigning, and I think that people like Ben Houchen and Andy Street have done so much that people will look at what they have achieved for their communities, and that's what they will be voting for.
Kemi, he's campaigning. I'm just interested, what are you doing? Where are you at with your life and your professional career?
Well, I'm on GB News.
You're on GB News. What are you doing on GB News? I'm just interested how you're positioning yourself or what the future holds for you.
Well, my most critical priority is to do everything we can to get a Conservative government. I think that it is Conservatives that run this country best and deliver for people. So this morning, I am telling our story, and I will be going out campaigning later on. But really, what I want to see is us win an election. It's very difficult after 14 years. There's often a natural fatigue. But there is so much that we have done, and I want to be able to tell that story. The last 5 years have been particularly difficult. We've had several once-in-a-generation events, like COVID, the amount that we had to do to keep the country going. We have a war in Europe. We now have a war in the Middle East. All of those things, I could tell you so much from the international trade perspective, what we're doing around supply chains to make sure that the country continues to function. So I'm doing my job, and I'm working hard for the people of Saffron Walden, my constituency, as well as the UK.
Well, maybe another day we'll have time to do all of that. I'm not asking people to agree with you, but certainly you're always very interesting to listen to, and thank you very much for your time this morning.
Yeah, Kemi Badenoch, Minister for Women and Equalities. Pleasure. Thank you very much. Right, stay with us. Lots more still to come. We've got 15 more minutes of the programme here on Breakfast. We will see you after this short break.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Scotland, home of Humza Yousaf's hate crime law, aka the Clypes Charter.
Clype, a delightfully Scottish word for a grass, a snitch, or in the context of Russell Finley's opening gambit during the hate crime debate at Holyrood last week, reporting your friends, family and neighbours to the police for alleged hate crimes. The SNP responded by doubling down on the new law's ability to protect vulnerable victims.
I am confident that we have robust legislation that will protect those who are vulnerable to harm.
But other victims are emerging in the wake of this new legislation. As the bill moved through Parliament, concerned rows of police inundated with vexatious complaints, targeting individuals who had committed no crimes. The first fortnight of the new law gave rise to nearly 9,000 complaints.
The vast majority, at least 95%, have been deemed not to be crimes.
False reporting is nothing new. A social post from Scottish Conservative Murdo Fraser was flagged by a trans rights activist in November.
Police decided that no crime had been committed, but nevertheless that was recorded as a non-crime hate incident.
And Alba Westminster leader Neil Hanvey says he too has been targeted under pre-existing legislation.
I've been the victim of at least one of those complaints, and that's taken up the time of police officers.
Thick skin can be expected of our elected officials, but what about the public? 74-year-old Morag McDougall-Brown says she was reported to police by a neighbour, and the experience has taken its toll.
I hate to think that anybody like me or similar to my age would ever have to go through this, because I really don't think I will ever go over it.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Now, we've got the host of Most of Showbiz correspondent, Hayley Palmer, now in the studio. And Hayley has come in this morning because Barbara Streisand has been making the news. Tell us why, Hayley.
Well, first of all, Barbara is an icon to me. However, she has
allegedly commented on Melissa McCarthy, who's an actress. She has said on her Instagram, she put a picture up of herself with a friend, and she said, "Oh, say hi to your friend. Have you taken the drug Ozempic, which is the
fat loss,
the weight loss drug?
Diabetic drug, isn't it, which leads to weight loss? Yeah,
that's right. So there's been a lot of stuff in the press about this, saying, was that a rude comment? Since that comment has actually been deleted. But Barbara Streisand said, no, it was just, you know, a nice thing to say. I was complimenting her.
You could have just said, you look lovely.
Exactly. You look amazing.
Really well. But it sounded a bit like fat shaming. And I think that's what you don't expect from Barbara Streisand, because you don't need to do that if you're Barbara Streisand, you know.
Absolutely.
You're royalty, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, she's 82 years old. I am wondering if she sat there on Instagram making comments, but, you know, we'll let that one go. But, yeah, I agree with you, Isabel. I think that if you're going to write on someone's Instagram, then, yeah, we'd, like, pick each other up. Yeah, you look amazing, you look incredible. However, there is Barbara Streisand, and I do love her songs. Do you, Eamonn? Are you a big...
I do, but except I'm going to tell you this. I went to see her in concert in London, right?
Oh, OK.
Maybe it was 20 years ago. And she had these massive, like I'm talking massive autocues to her right, to her left, and straight down the middle, where she sang every song from the autocue.
Oh, really?
Oh. But
her own song.
Yeah, you would have thought she might have known the words by now, but it was just interesting. It was just an observation, you know. Just...
Yeah, I mean, I love Somewhere. That's my favourite Barbara Streisand song, and Women in Love.
She's got a range, her vocal range is absolutely incredible. I mean, what she has done over the years as well, acting, directing, producing, and all the... singing. She's got
a lot of skills, hasn't she? But you know what? She is Barbara Streisand. She is a legend. She's a bit like you, Eamonn. She can say what she wants because she's of that status. So we're going to let it go for now. But it's still going on in the press now, you know. You're still like, oh, no, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. But the thing is, if you write it on Instagram, it's there for everybody to see.
Yeah.
You know, it's out there. And also sometimes things in writing can come across a little bit different, I guess. Or maybe she's just being completely honest because she has got a background of being quite direct. So... yeah. Maybe that's what it is. Yeah.
Can I talking sort of showbiz royalty? Taylor Swift has been making the news today. I don't know if you've seen any of this in the papers this morning. Apparently, BBC news consumers are getting fed up of getting push notifications when she releases a new album, and they're saying that is she paying them sort of marketing fees because that's not news. How is it that Taylor Swift has managed to make her way into sort of mainstream news in other countries? It is incredible.
It is incredible, her success. I actually went to see her concert at the cinema. I dragged Mark along to see it, and we didn't realise it was like 3 hours long.
Gosh.
Like, falling asleep a little bit halfway through. But...
she's performing in Hong Kong or something.
Yeah.
And you're watching in Hounslow.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, if you've really got the time to go and see it. But... you're right, she's become this absolute megastar. I mean, it's crazy. The prices of tickets, and to even get hold of a ticket, you've got to be...
scouts that have been... scammers that have been defrauding them, haven't they? Millions and millions of Swifties have lost loads of money trying to get on the Eras tour here in London, or these false ticket sales. So that's a real shame, isn't it?
Yeah.
But, yeah, Taylor Swift taking over the world, I think almost... you know,
do you like her, Isabel?
I love Taylor Swift, but I think there can be too much of a good thing.
That's it. Sometimes it's completely overdone, isn't it? I mean, I like some of her songs, and you know, if I got a ticket to the concert, I'd go, but I wouldn't be like going all out there and paying thousands of pounds. I'd rather go to the Maldives.
Interesting point. What else have you got? Who else have you got?
Well, I want to talk about Tom Cruise because he's shooting the new Mission Impossible film in Trafalgar Square.
In London, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Apparently, he's hired hawks to keep the pigeons away because in Trafalgar Square there's so many pigeons there. But Tom Cruise is amazing, isn't he? Because he gets fully involved. I've noticed before with his films, he's right on there, hands-on.
He is a great talent. And I just forget what this movie's called, Mission Impossible. The first part of it, part one, I went to see last year. One of the very, very few movies. I saw two movies, I think, last year. One was Plane with Gerard Butler, and the other one was Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise. And the rest of the year's been rubbish, and it continues. A guy phoned me last night and said, do you want to go to the cinema? I said, what's on? Nothing. It's all rubbish. But Mission Impossible is not rubbish. It's really, really good.
Yeah, we like a bit of that. I actually went to the cinema last night and I went to see the Amy Winehouse film.
What did you think?
I actually really enjoyed it because I didn't know much about her before. So
why do you want to go and be depressed for? I look at that and I'd think, no, but just depressed me. I don't want to
Actually, I found it quite endearing, her life.
Did you?
Yeah, I did, and with her dad and... Oh,
she was a daddy's girl.
She really was, and I did actually have a little cry because I felt it was quite emotional
I
to
think
watch
it's
her
awful
story.
to see such talent wasted, and actually, I think there's a lot of people responsible for that. You know, exploit. I saw her with my own eyes on stage between 1 year and the next, being entirely different. No one who was representing her.
What way is Isabel entirely different?
She was brilliant, fantastic, top of her game, incredible vocals, musician, lyricist, everything. 1 year, 12 months later, she was stumbling, she was forgetting her lyrics.
Yeah, it's painful to watch.
It was a car crash, and she should never have been allowed on that stage. She should have been taken straight to rehab.
I think you're right. Someone should have stepped in. I mean, obviously her love life is different because you can't tell someone what to do. But with her work-wise, I think she needed someone to say, actually, that's not OK. You need to be on time. You need to be here. She needed someone, but no one really stood up to her.
They were making money out of her as well.
Yeah. So I know what you mean, Eamonn. We like to be entertained and happy. But you could take the Maltesers in with you and be happy.
Very true. But Mission Impossible, I'll wait till that one comes out. Hayley, always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your insight and your comments there. The time is 23 minutes past 9. It's time for us to say goodbye to you.
Yes, thanks for your company today. It's been a pleasure. And up next, it is Andrew and Bev with Britain's Newsroom. Have a fabulous May Day, 1st of May. Enjoy.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. A lot of cloud today with some showers, but there'll be more heavy rain arriving into the south overnight, even some thunderstorms. Initially, the best of any sunshine will be across the western parts, and there'll be some decent sunny spells around during the morning. Northwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Wales keep those sunny spells well into the afternoon. Otherwise, increasing amounts of cloud arrive from the east with some showery rain, especially for eastern Scotland, parts of central and eastern England. But away from the showery rain, actually it's going to be relatively warm, particularly where we get some sunshine through central parts, Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, temperatures up into the high teens, perhaps even 20, 21 Celsius. Nevertheless, looking towards the south into the evening, we've got this area of heavy rain moving up, perhaps even some thunderstorms across some southern counties of England into South Wales during the early hours of tomorrow. And those thunderstorms could be accompanied by frequent lightning, some very heavy rainfall. Be a noisy night in places, but they'll be hit and miss, and they will be clearing away across South Wales and the southwest of England during the morning tomorrow, leaving a legacy of low cloud and outbreaks of drizzly rain. Elsewhere, brighter skies develop after a mostly dry night. Plenty of sunshine for Scotland, Northern Ireland into much of central and eastern England.